The Adventures of the Claw Woman in the World of Men. Prologue. No one knows exactly where she came from. Some say she was born from a root touched by a full moon. Others believe she is the curse of an ancient witch, caught between two worlds. But those who have seen her with their own eyes, whether through the thickets of the Enchanted Forest or in the night light of the city, know that she is not just a legend. She is alive. She moves on 2 fingers or 4, she climbs, she sneaks through the shadows, and in the middle of her palm she has a woman's face, with green eyes, a mouth that does not utter a word, and a look that penetrates to the bones. She is called the Claw Woman. For centuries, she has been the silent guardian of the forest, spirit between animal and man, between light and darkness. There, in the realm hidden from mortal eyes, the animals respected her, the trees recognized her, and the wind whispered secrets to her from the deepest roots of the world. But the balance was broken. The hunters crossed the borders. They entered the depths of the forest with weapons, traps and smoke. They kidnapped, wounded, destroyed. And one day, a baby rabbit came crying to the Claw Woman, asking for help. Then she felt the call. For the first time, the Claw Woman crossed the invisible border between the worlds. From the Enchanted Forest to the land of people, a world of concrete, surveillance cameras, cars that don't sleep and eyes that judge. What was she looking for in this place full of noise and fear? To bring back the bunny's mother? To avenge the forest? Or maybe, to show people that not all shadows come to do harm? The adventure would transform her. Because in the world of humans, the Claw Woman would not be just a forest guardian. She would become a symbol, a target, a hero, a monster. This is her story. A story about courage, about broken boundaries and bridges created from unusual gestures. A story about what it means to guard life, even when no one listens to her anymore. This is the Claw Woman's mission in the land of humans. Chapter 1. Bunny's Tears. The sun had just begun to lift its eyelashes above the horizon, sending timid rays through the transparent leaves of the trees in the Enchanted Forest. The morning air vibrated slightly, scented with the scent of wild mint, wet moss and golden pollen. Above a hidden clearing, late fireflies danced in the cool air, as if the night had not dared to leave that corner of the world where animals spoke. Trees listened and rivers sang old stories. The woman walked Claw. She was a strange and fascinating creature, born of ancient spells and pagan blood, with a body like a giant palm, walking on 4 or 2 bony and supple fingers, and the center of her palm was a woman's face, with fiery green eyes, a small and determined mouth, and a delicate nose. The back of her hand was muscular and could protect or shelter her, and the fingers moved with the grace of a ballerina or the strength of a predator. That morning, Claw Woman was not looking for anything. She simply listened to her footsteps in the grass and the quiet hum of the forest, but the harmony suddenly broke, like a branch under the weight of winter. From the thicket, a whimper came. Then another, and from the blackberry bushes a baby rabbit appeared. Its eyes were large, round and wet, and its fur was tousled. It wobbled on thin paws and cried. It was not an ordinary sound to the Claw Woman's ears. It was not a physical pain, but a heart-rending pain of the soul. "What hurts you, little grass soul?" she asked in a low, hoarse voice, a voice that vibrated directly from the skin of her hand. The rabbit started, but something in the Claw Woman's eyes dispelled his fear. Perhaps because he saw in them not a monster, but a strange mother of the forest, force of order, born of chaos. With trembling lips, the rabbit said, "Mother was caught last night, a hunter from the land of men. They left traps at the edge of the forest. I ran. But I didn't hear her again. Just a sound, then silence. She doesn't come back." The Claw Woman's eyes flashed. Their green turned dark, like wet grass in the rain. The hunters from the land of men had violated the sacred boundary. That space between the worlds was to be crossed only with respect. Every creature knew the silent rule. The forest gives you food only if you don't destroy its balance. "Will you show me the place?" she asked simply. The rabbit nodded, wiping his nose with a trembling paw. With small but determined steps, he set off through the grass. The Claw Woman followed him. The road took them to the edge of the forest, where the leaves stopped whispering and the wind had no voice. The trees were sparser, and the light was becoming too white, too cold, and in the distance, cultivated fields and the shadows of houses could be seen. The land of men. "There," whispered the bunny, with a little finger outstretched, and a bush. There was a steel trap, baited, and strands of brown fur. His mother's fur. The Claw Woman said nothing. She just closed her eyes and touched the ground with the backs of her fingers. The sap of the earth told her the truth. Her mother had been taken. She was alive, but she was locked up, far away, in the land of men. The little rabbit began to cry again. "We will go and get it," said the Claw Woman firmly. "No one tears a life from the forest without paying." And so the decision had been made. The Claw Woman, born of magic and ancient fears, was stepping into the world of men for the first time, not as a wind of terror, but as a force of justice. The bunny ran beside her, small but full of hope, as they moved away from the forest. The sun was rising in the sky. There was no more dew, no more birdsong. Only asphalt, rusty iron and walls. And into such a cold and unfeeling world, a being like no one had ever seen before would enter for the first time. A creature born for darkness, but who now carried, in her blood, the sap of justice. Chapter 2. Crossing the Border. Morning was slowly rolling over the world, but the forest still held the shadows and silence of night. The Claw Woman and the little rabbit walked side by side, leaving the heart of the Enchanted Forest. The air grew heavier as they approached the edge of the known world, where the rustling of leaves died away and the song of birds turned to a restless murmur. "Here begins the silence," murmured the Claw Woman, almost to herself. The rabbit looked at her in bewilderment. His eyes, though large and gentle, understood only fear and longing. He did not know what border or the world beyond meant. But he knew that his mother was no longer here. And the Claw Woman seemed to know where to go to find her. In front of them was a long, sparse clearing, with yellow grass and low bushes. Beyond it, the laced line of fences could be seen, a dusty country road, and beyond it, all, the first silhouettes of houses. "Here the border is not seen with the eyes, but with the soul," said the Claw Woman, a thin line, drawn by fear, forgetfulness and arrogance. People forgot about the forest, and the forest learned to beware of people. The little bunny looked at her, but he did not understand any of the heavy words. He only felt that they were walking in a place where the world had changed. The leaf no longer whispered. The wind no longer carried the smell of roots, but of smoke. Not a single creature sang. Only silence, broken from time to time by awkward chirping or a distant bark. The Claw Woman stopped and dug her fingers into the ground. "This is the border that we cross, but we will not be the same anymore. Are you ready, little one?" "Yes," the bunny answered, in a strangled voice. "Will we find Mom? We will look for her. And if we find her, we will bring her back. If not, we will mourn her with dignity. But we will not let the world think that they can crush us without feeling the answer." Then, without saying anything else, the Claw Woman lifted her 4 fingers from the ground and stepped across the invisible border. And the world changed, and the world of people. The air was heavier. It did not smell of the forest, but of gasoline, hot iron and old asphalt. The ground was hard, woven with gravel and cracks. Instead of leaves, their steps touched plastic threads, pieces of paper and tire tracks. The Claw Woman walked carefully, her senses stretched like springs. This world did not belong to her, and she had no intention of forgetting it. In the distance, the first traces of settlement could be seen. A farm with rusty wire fences, a silo, a white house with a tin roof, and the field. 2 people walked slowly, gathering something from the ground. They did not see them. The rabbit clung to the Claw Woman's leg, watching everything in amazement. It was the first time she had stepped so far from the clearing. "Why would people want to catch rabbits?" she asked, her voice low. "For food," she said, "or for fur, or because they do not know how to look a rabbit in the eye and see suffering. But we don't harm anyone. The world of people is not built on justice, but on power. The power to decide what lives and what dies. And when they forget the forest, they forget the laws of balance." They walked slowly, avoiding roads and looks. The Claw Woman slipped past walls, under fences, behind cars. People didn't notice her, not because she wasn't visible, but because their minds refused to understand what they didn't know. Sometimes they saw her out of the corner of their eyes, frowned and told themselves they were dreaming. Sometimes, children saw her and cried or laughed, but adults told them it was just a story. And so she could go on. They arrived in a village, a dusty place, with wide yards, high gates and tied dogs. It smelled of hay, diesel and fried meat, and hens were clucking hysterically. In a shed, a cat was looking at the bunny with yellow eyes. But it didn't attack him. She retreated into the darkness. feeling the strange presence of the Claw Woman. "Are you sure they brought her here?" asked the Claw Woman. "I don't know, but this is where the smell of iron came from, and this is where the song of the forest died out," the bunny said, trembling. The Claw Woman closed her eyes. She stretched her senses through the ground, through the air, through the vibration of the world. And then she felt it, a weak but familiar presence, a heart that beat slowly, somewhere in a shelter. The bunny's mother was there. Weak, wounded, but alive. "It's time to go down to their world," she whispered, and the night that was beginning to fall, the village seemed empty. But the shadows were full of eyes. The Claw Woman slipped through the fences, climbed onto a barrel, then lowered herself into a shed covered with tin. There, in a wooden crate, in a small cage, lay a brown rabbit, with a crudely bandaged paw and cloudy eyes. "Mom!" the baby cried, running towards her. "No. Back!" the Claw Woman whispered, but it was too late. The light suddenly came on. A man in overalls appeared in the doorway, and in one hand he held a flashlight, in the other a crowbar. "What the hell?" The Claw Woman rose in all her terrifying splendor, a huge palm, with burning green eyes in the center. Her fingers rose like steel arms. "You broke the covenant. You wounded the forest. Now the forest is watching you," she said. The man was stunned. He felt fear not as a thought, but as a weight on his chest. He could not move either the crowbar or the flashlight. He could only remember all the stories he had laughed at as a child. The ones about the six-fingered creature with a face in the palm of his hand that comes after those who catch what shouldn't be caught. And then, for the first time in his life, he asked for forgiveness without words. He put down his crowbar, he opened the cage, and the rabbit was free. The Claw Woman did not touch him. She did not curse him. She left him only with her gaze. And with the memory of being seen by another world, as night rose over the village, 3 figures crept back towards the forest. The Claw Woman, the rabbit, and his mother. Under their feet, the invisible border seemed weaker, thinner. Perhaps because, that day, someone in the human world had remembered, or perhaps because someone in the forest had chosen not to hurt, but to heal. And so, the beginning of the Claw Woman's adventure in the human world was sealed not with a fight, but with an act of mercy. But the silence would not last. The shadows felt it. And the humans would soon begin to speak. Chapter 3. The Village Near the Wood. The sun had barely risen above the tree line when the Claw Woman, accompanied by the little rabbit and his mother, stepped onto the edge of a beaten path that led to a small village, nestled between hills and shadows. It was called the Village Near the Wood. But the name was only a memory, because the forest was no longer loved, but feared, and the border between the two worlds was not just trees, but distrust. The Claw Woman stopped on a rise of land, from where she could see the entire village. It was the first time she had looked at it with her eyes as a creature from another realm. She had expected chaos, grayness, pain. But what she saw was stranger than any dream. The houses were square and docile, standing still like tied animals. They had red or gray roofs, shiny glass windows, iron or wooden fences, and yards that seemed strewn with useless objects. Old tires, broken toys, crates, bottles, and sometimes an abandoned bicycle. Nothing moved. Everything seemed caught in a long breath, a silent wait. "What is this?" asked the bunny, raising its ears. "Is it a village?" "Yes," answered the Claw Woman. "But he is sick. People tried to keep him alive with noise, with objects, with rules. But something broke him. Nothing connects him to the forest anymore." They descended slowly, hiding near the bushes and dry trees. As they got closer, the smells changed. The forest smelled of wet leaves, rotten earth, roots and animals. Here the air was filled with thick smoke, fried fat, hot asphalt and rust. It was a heavy smell, like a blanket pulled over a heart that had stopped beating. The first people caught sight of them from behind the curtains. They did not look directly, but furtively. Maybe they did not see exactly what the Claw Woman was, but they felt that something was not usual, a shadow that was too dense, a strange silhouette. Some bowed, others closed the windows. A child stopped played, letting the ball fall from her hands. An old woman spat into her bosom and pulled the shutter. The Claw Woman walked slowly, with wide steps, balancing lightly on 2 of her 4 toes. Her face, in the palm, did not smile. But the green eyes in the center looked everywhere, at the cracked window of a house, at the tied dog growling behind the fence, at the rusty antenna creaking in the wind, on top of a wooden house. The village was a sleeping animal, but a dangerous animal. The tension of silence was felt in the air, fear folded into habit. "They are too quiet," said the bunny's mother, in a low voice. "Too quiet for some people." "Because it is not quiet," said the Claw Woman. "T is the silence of fear. They feel that they no longer control everything. And then they close themselves off. They hide." In front of them, on a wooden bench, sat an old man with a hat. He did not move when they approached. He just sighed deeply and looked at her directly. "Is it you?" he asked, in a dry voice. "I am," she answered. "But you? Who are you?" "I was a forester. I heard about you in my grandfather's stories. He said that a hand with a face comes down from the forest when the balance is broken. That you are neither good nor bad. You are judgment itself. And you? What do you judge?" "Me. I'm just watching. The rest of the village has long forgotten itself. Maybe it's a good thing you came." The Claw Woman walks further, looking at the details that were so foreign to her. A satellite dish crookedly attached to a chimney, a tractor covered with blue cloth, a window with empty flower pots, a child's swing creaking softly, even without wind, on the streets. The asphalt was cracked, full of weeds that tried, timidly, to conquer the ground again. A group of children followed her in silence. They didn't run, they didn't come closer. They just watched her point. One of them dared. "Are you a story?" The Claw Woman stopped. She leaned slightly towards the bravest child, and her mouth in her palm said gently, "No, they are what remains after people forget the stories." The child blinked a few times. Then he ran away, but not out of fear. He went to tell his mother that he had seen a legend. His mother did not believe him. In the middle of the village, there was a large wooden cross, stuck in a patch of dry grass. On the cross hung a rusty sign, "The village near the woods, welcome." Beneath it, in red paint, someone had written, "But don't stay too long." The Claw Woman touched it with one of her long fingers. The wood trembled. The earth trembled slightly. "Here, the forest has been forgotten. But the roots are still underground. I can feel them." "Maybe the forest wants to come back," said the bunny. "Or maybe it wants to take back what was stolen from it," said his mother. In a large yard, they saw an animal trap, a wire cage, with a piece of apple in the middle. The bunny started. His mother stepped back. The Claw Woman approached the trap and touched it. The wire melted slightly, as if the earth had absorbed it. The trap was no longer there. "Here we begin," she said. "Not with revenge. With release. With forgiveness. But if he doesn't change, we'll go deeper." The night that followed, the village near the woods dreamed strangely. The people dreamed of living forests. They dreamed of a giant palm tree with burning green eyes. They dreamed of talking animals, a tall woman climbing walls, and voices that didn't come from their lips, but directly from their minds. Some woke up crying. Others threw their traps. A few prayed. Some laughed at all this. But everyone, absolutely everyone, felt that something had changed. And so the Claw Woman stepped deeper into the world of people. The village near the woods had been just the gate. Before her, the cities, the blocks, the weapons, the screams of cars, and the dreams of those who had completely forgotten about nature awaited her. But she didn't forget. And she was not alone. Chapter 4. The Hunter's House. The sun was slowly setting over the hills, casting long shadows across the silent gardens of the village. On a dirt path, hidden by old trees, the Claw Woman moved silently, followed by the gray-white rabbit, whose round, dark eyes missed no detail. They walked slowly, carefully, feeling that they were approaching a dangerous edge. "Here, my mother was brought," the rabbit whispered. "I felt it. Last night, I dreamed of a blood trap, and a cage that was closing." "It wasn't a dream," murmured the Claw Woman, touching the ground with her fingers. "The roots of the forest told her. I know where it is." They descended in silence to a clearing where the grass no longer grew. The bushes gathered as if in silent defense. The air was heavy, stinging, smelling of scrap metal, smoke, dried blood. And there, beyond an arch of elder and thorns, the hunter's house could be seen. It was a low structure, made of thick wooden beams and rusty tin. The sloping roof was full of black stains and moss. The windows were dirty, with bars on the inside, and around the yard, a high fence made of thick wire, with rusty tips and hanging signs. "Danger! Dogs! Private property! Do not enter!" But what made the Claw Woman and the sound that made the bunny stop and drop to the ground was the angry, agitated barking of the 3 guard dogs, large, black, bound with thick chains. They stirred and sniffed the air, knowing that someone was there, but still without seeing. "I can feel it, it's there, and the cage, in the corner of the yard," the bunny whispered. The Claw Woman lowered herself even lower, sneaking to the edge of the bushes. She raised her body on 2 toes, and stretched the other 2 above her head, like antennae. From that angle she could see better. The cage was old, made of wood and metal mesh, supported by a wall of the shed. Inside, the bunny's mother sat crouched, her fur dirty and her eyes shining in the darkness. She didn't make a sound. She was just trembling slightly. All around, the dogs patrolled anxiously, barking, sniffing, gnashing their fangs. "The hunter is keeping her as bait," said the Claw Woman. "Maybe he wants to attract foxes, or other rabbits, other beings." "It's cruel," said the bunny. "We have to save her." "But how?" The Claw Woman didn't answer immediately. Her green gaze, from the middle of her palm, scanned the yard, the location of the chains, the distance to the fence, the dim light in the main house. Flickering light could be seen in one of the windows. Someone was there. "We will wait. When the full night comes, the shadows will be thicker. And then, I will sneak in." Evening fell silent, and darkness fell over the yard like a blanket of ashes. The dogs continued to bark, but less often, tired from a full day of vigilance. Inside the house, the hunter moved lazily, and a moment of silence. There was a clink of glass, then heavy footsteps on the floor. The Claw Woman moved, not like a man, not like a beast, but like a shadow torn from the night. She crawled lightly on the fence, clinging to the rusty metal without scratching it. She slipped through the wires like a thick liquid, passing unseen by one of the dogs. When another raised its muzzle and sniffed in her direction, she stopped motionless, like a statue. Then she continued the road. When she reached the cage, she stretched out her fingers and wrapped them around the latch. The iron seemed to melt at her touch, yielding like a burnt leaf. The door opened slowly. The mother bunny looked at her without fear. She had recognized her. "Did my baby send you?" The Claw Woman tilted her head slightly. "Yes, he brought me here. And now we have to get out. I can't run, I have a wound. I tried to escape and hit the edge of the cage. Then I will carry you." With a gentleness unexpected for being made of flesh, bone, and mystery, the Claw Woman wrapped the bunny's mother in her palm and began to retreat. But at that moment, one of the dogs smelled blood. Its bark rang out sharp and savage, and 2 others joined it. They rushed to the corner of the yard, yanking the chains with frightening force. One of the chains snapped with a metallic noise. The wire had broken. The Claw Woman had no time for silence. With huge leaps, she climbed the fence again. With the rabbit clutched in her palm. One of the dogs jumped and managed to tear the edge of one of her fingers, but her blood was not blood. There was a greenish light that flashed for a moment, and the dog retreated, howling, blinded. From beyond the fence, the rabbit was waiting, trembling. When he saw her coming, he jumped towards his mother and touched her with his wet nose. "Mom. Mom, you're alive." "Yes, baby. But without her, I wouldn't have been here." The Claw Woman looked again towards the hunter's house. A light came on, a shout was heard. "Who's there?" "You bastards. You've let the rabbit go." There was the sound of a loaded rifle, but it was too late. The Claw Woman had already disappeared into the forest, with the 2 creatures by her side. And the hunter, no matter how fast he ran, would only find a broken cage and a strange mark of a giant palm, left in the mud of the yard. That night, in the forest on the edge of the village, a small but true miracle happened. The bunny's mother was treated with healing herbs brought by deer, leaves crushed by badgers, and a liqueur prepared by an old owl. The Claw Woman guarded the entire forest, sitting in a hollow tree, listening to the breeze. And somewhere, deep in the heart of the forest, an old voice whispered, "Something has awakened, not just in people, but in you, Claw Woman. You know mercy now." The Claw Woman did not answer, but in her green eyes a new light appeared, not of fire, but of hope. Chapter 5. In the Shadow of Night. Night was falling softly over the edge of the village, like a dark velvet cloth stretched across the ground. The forests were silent, the rustling stopped, and the wind was retreating somewhere high up among the stars, to make way for deep silence and that void of sound and movement. On the threshold between dream and reality, the Claw Woman waited. She stood motionless, like a figure of damp stone, embedded in the dense bushes at the edge of the hunter's yard. Beside her, the little rabbit, clinging to a root, looked with wide eyes at the house where, not long ago, its mother had been held captive. The little creature's breathing was rapid, but silent. He had already learned that silence can save lives. In the yard, the dogs slept curled up under shed, tired after the day of barking and fighting. Their chains were now sleeping wires that moved only when an ear twitched in a dream. The cage was empty. The hunter had not come out to see what had happened. He had probably thought that a bold fox or an unseen thief had stolen the prey. But he did not suspect that behind that flight stood a creature that even the darkest fairy tales did not dare to speak of. The Claw Woman lay down on the ground. She clung to the cold ground, with her fingers spread out, like a living cross. She waited for the darkness to become deeper, for the silence to settle like a leaden cloak over the roofs. She knew that the hunter had the habit of drinking late and falling asleep with his head on the table or in bed, with his rifle leaning against the door. She was patient. She had been born of patience, of silence and darkness. Time passed slowly. Only a lost cricket could be heard and the faint creak of a board in the house. At one point, the light in the window flickered and went out. Then, a moment later, there was a rumble, a long, heavy snore. It was time. With a smooth movement, like a ripple of dark water, the Claw Woman rose. She rose on two of her fingers, and with the other two she pulled herself forward, passing through the shadows of the trees. She approached the fence and climbed it easily, as if she had dissolved through the metal. She made no noise. She left no traces. Arriving in the yard, she bypassed the sleeping dogs. She bypassed the cage as well. Now her target was different. The house. The hunter. She stopped by the door. Touching the doorknob. With the tip of a finger, she felt the cold iron, sweaty from time and dirty hands. She slipped inside like a breath unseen, and the door, though heavy, made no sound. It was as if the house recognized her, or perhaps it was afraid of her. Inside it smelled of stale tobacco, old wine, and sunburned leather. On the table, an overturned lamp had left an oil stain on the floor, a rifle leaned, and beyond, in the back room, on a creaky wooden bed, slept the hunter. He was a solid man, with a red face and a matted beard, covered with a fur blanket. He was breathing hard, his mouth half open. Under the bed, his dirty boots. Beside him, a hunting knife and an unfinished deerskin. The Claw Woman slowly walked into the room. Every step was a covenant with the night. She stretched out her arms, and her huge palm, the green-eyed face lit up slightly, a faint aura that cast long shadows on the walls. The hunter flinched. He turned on his side. The Claw Woman stopped. Then, when he seemed to fall asleep again, she approached the bedside table. She wanted to know who this man was. What motivated a soul to catch and hurt for pleasure? She opened the drawer slightly. Inside lay a notebook, with frayed corners and pages stained with old blood. She leafed through it. There were notes, drawings, a map of traps, names of animals, dozens of notes. And in a corner, a sketcher being with a huge palm and a face in the center. It was her. She had been seen. Maybe in a dream or in a story heard once. The hunter had been looking for her. That moment, the hunter's eyes opened. He saw the weak light in the room and stood up in a daze. Who's there? He rubbed his eyes, and when his vision cleared, he froze. Something impossible stood before him, a creature that was neither man nor beast. It had a huge hand instead of a body, with a woman's face in the middle. Green eyes, a quiet mouth, a fine nose. The skin was of flesh, but also of something else, of sap, of shadow, of shell and star. The hunter remained motionless. He lost his words. Then, suddenly, he lost consciousness. Fainting. The Claw Woman did not touch him. She did not kill him. She did not stain her juice of justice with his blood. But she left him a mark. With a finger, she drew a bright green line across his sleeping chest. There, that man would feel a slight burn for the rest of his life. Like a reminder, a vow of the night. Then she turned. Before leaving, she stopped at a closet. She opened the door and saw the iron traps. She touched them with her palm. They all melted in an instant, as if they were not made of metal, but of wax. When she left the house, it seemed as if the darkness was applauding her. In the yard, the dogs were still sleeping. The forest was waiting. The little bunny was waiting for her. When she saw her coming, she jumped on one leg and joined her. "Have you been to his place?" The Claw Woman slightly tilted her face in her palm. "Yes." "Did you scare him?" "No. I let him see his fear. The way animals see it." "Do you think he won't catch it again?" "You will know from now on that he is seen. That the forest has eyes. That I am there." The night covered them again. But in the heart of the forest, something had changed, news had rolled, like a leaf carried by the wind. The Claw Woman stepped into a man's house. And the world of men would never be the same again. Chapter 6. The Hunters Fainting. In the heart of the night, when the stars seemed like nails hammered into a celestial silence, the hunter's house had become a small focus of destiny, and that silence in which the world seemed suspended between two heartbeats. The man's heavy body slept immersed in a drunkenness of fatigue and wine. He did not dream for fear of waking up in another nightmare. But the dream found him even without wanting to die in the dark room. A shape began to take shape. First a shadow, then a shadow. With outlines, then a presence that seemed to disregard the laws of the world. The Claw Woman stepped smoothly into the room. Her silhouette did not resemble anything human. She walked lightly, almost floating, sometimes supporting herself on 2, sometimes on 4 of her long, bony fingers. Her huge arm, instead of a body, seemed carved from living bone, and her palm, open like a strange flower, bore her face. A woman with large, sparkling green eyes and a thin mouth that seemed never made to smile. She stopped by the hunter's bed. She looked at him. His breathing was heavy, his body tense in sleep. He smelled of dried moss, boar meat and gun oil. On the wall above the bed hung a deer's head. On the floor, under the bedside table, a crate of traps, and there, between 2 on the hooks, the rusty key to the cage where the mother rabbit had been kept hung. The Claw Woman extended a delicate claw. She did not touch the man. She did not wake him. She bent down and, with slow and determined movements, lowered her fingers to the crate. Then, in a reflex gesture, perhaps from a twitch of the subconscious, the hunter opened his eyes. Time shattered like a mirror. His gaze met the green eyes in his palm. He suddenly raised himself on his elbow, as if a beast had bitten him from a dream. He remained suspended for a moment between dream and reality, but what he saw was too clear. The weak light from the lamp fell on the creature's outline and revealed its strange skin, between flesh and bark, between clay and blood. The hunter's mouth opened, but no sound came out. His eyes were closed, rounded. Her neck tensed. Her arms trembled. What are you?" He received no answer. The Claw Woman did not speak in words. She spoke with presence, with silence, with the touch of air. She turned her palm slightly towards him. Her face looked into his eyes, a still, but alive look, full of something beyond understanding, pain, memory, judgment. The hunter took a step back on the bed. Then another. He clung to the edge of the sheet, but in that desperate gesture, he lost his balance. He collapsed from the bed, hitting his head on the wooden crate. Dull sound, a sigh. Then, silence. He had fainted. The Claw Woman remained motionless. For a while she looked at him. His body was inert. He was breathing heavily, but not dangerously. She had no intention of hurting him, just of stopping him, till she learned that there was another order than the one she had imposed with nets, traps, and blood. She approached the chest under the nightstand and, with the delicacy of a bird pecking a berry from the ice, stuck one of her long claws between the keys. She made a simple gesture and extracted the key easily. The cold metal felt alive in her hand. Perhaps for the first time in years, that object had a new purpose, freedom. She turned to the door and, passing by the fainted hunter, she paused for a moment. She placed a claw on his forehead. Not to punish him, but to let him see and the deep dream of the fainter. The hunter felt a shiver. A slight tremor descended in his chest and then spread, like a whirlwind, and in the darkness of that dream, an image appeared to him, a huge tree with deep roots and branches that rose towards the sky. In it, all the animals stood together. Foxes, deer, owls, hedgehogs, even rabbits, looking at him with wide eyes. They were not angry, just present, alive, and silent. The Claw Woman slipped out, the door closing without a creak, and the yard. The dogs had woken up, but they did not bark. They felt something that man could not understand. They raised their heads, but did not whine. They just followed with silent eyes that shape that passed through the night like a lesson written on the sky with invisible ink. The bunny was waiting for her under a storm, with wide and wet eyes. "Did you find her?" The claw woman raised the claw in which she held the key. The metal gleamed faintly in the moonlight. "Yes," she answered in her mute voice, "we are taking her back. No one should be held with strength." They headed for the cage, located at the edge of the forest, near the barn. The bunny's mother was still there, curled up in a corner, too weak to run, too injured to hope. But when she saw the face in the palm and heard the jingle of the key, something lit up in her eyes. The door opened with a faint creak. The claw woman touched her lightly, letting her feel that freedom was not a trap. The bunny's mother staggered out but did not run. She approached her son and touched him with her snout. Then she turned and looked into the creature's eyes. For a moment, the two beings, one born from the earth, the other from the shadows, looked at each other, and in the mother's eyes there was gratitude, and in the palm's eyes, peace. When dawn broke, the claw woman had disappeared into the forest. The wind erased his tracks. Only a dog looked towards the road, its head tilted, as if listening to a story that cannot be told in words. The hunter would wake up at dawn, with a dull ache in his temples and a strange shadow in his heart. He would not be able to tell anyone what he had seen. But he would know deep inside that the world had changed that night. And that key was no longer there. Because the claw woman had left behind not just an open cage, but a lesson that would last longer than the hunt itself. Chapter 7. Liberation. The night remained silent, but the air vibrated with a new tension, and in the hunter's yard, the cage door remained open. The key, now abandoned in the grass, shone faintly in the moonlight. The mother rabbit, weak and wrinkled, slowly emerged from the bars, with hesitant steps. Her large wet eyes seemed not to believe in freedom yet. The smell of old wood, rust, and dogs still kept her alert. But next to her stood her son, his paws trembling but full of courage, and the claw woman, bent over in a silence that seemed to hold the world in place. "Mom," whispered the bunny, her voice broken with emotion. She sniffed him, then hugged him with her whole little body. That simple gesture of unconditional love seemed to ignite something even in the heart of the claw woman. The face in the palm, usually impassive, showed a trace of warm sadness. She slowly raised her gaze towards the silent barn. The silence was just a mask. She knew that the danger had not disappeared. Especially the dogs. A bark was heard from the sheepfold. Then another, closer, short, sharp. The claw woman raised two of her claws and placed them gently on the ground. "Listen. Feel the vibrations." The dogs had woken up and were catching the scent. Escape had become necessary. Immediately. "We have to go," said the claw woman in her inaudible voice, transmitted directly to the rabbit's mind. The mother and the baby rabbit started running through the grass, and the creature with the palm and face opened the way for them, piercing the shadows with the agility of a feline. Behind, the first door was heard slamming against the wall, the human cry. Sharp barks. 3 black dogs came out of the barn and started straight for the cage. Without hesitation, they had smelled that the escape had begun. The claw woman and the 2 rabbits passed under a broken fence, then through a field of tall nettles. The little rabbit struggled to keep up. His mother pushed him with her snout from behind, with the desperation of a mother who had learned what captivity means. The dogs were getting closer. "Don't stop," thought the claw woman, and sent this thought directly to them. Ahead was the edge of the forest. They were on the edge of the land of men, close to the line between the mechanical and the living world, but not yet safe. One of the dogs, a massive black-gray beast, with fangs shining in the moonlight, was approaching dangerously. Its bark was more like a wild howl. The ground trembled under its steps. It reached only a few steps from the bunny. Then, the claw woman turned suddenly. She stood on 2 fingers, and opened her palm towards the dog. Her face, white, ghostly, with burning green eyes, shone brightly. A blue-green aura poured from the center of her palm. The dog stopped, and his eyes, hardened by training and hunger, the reflection of that face was visible for a moment. He trembled. His barking was cut. He crouched down on the ground and, with a muffled whine, turned around. The 2 remaining dogs also stopped, stunned by the leader's reaction. The claw woman wasted no more time. She turned her back and started again after the rabbits, who were already entering the dense bushes of the forest. The enchanted trees welcomed them like lost sons. The leaves rustled slightly. The roots parted, making a path. The wind changed direction, sending the scents back, away from their pursuers and the depths of the forest. Finally, there was silence. They had been running for almost an hour, but it seemed like they were running for their lives. The mother bunny was barely breathing. The chick was staggering. The claw woman gathered them in her claws and, with amazing ease, lifted them and placed them on the trunk of a fallen tree. "You are free," she said in their thoughts. "You are back home. You saved us." The chick whispered. "You were like a dream." "I am not a dream, I am memory and justice." The mother bunny looked at her. She was no longer afraid. She bowed slightly, and their forest, all beings knew what fear was. But now they also knew what hope was. Later, in the clearing where the stars fell from the sky among the dense branches, the three stopped. The claw woman stretched out her fingers and drew signs in the ground. Old signs, with round shapes and winding lines, a language of those who no longer existed. "What are you doing?" asked the chick. "I want the forest to know today freedom was won. Not through fighting, but through courage. Not through blood, but through the memory that every being has a place in this world." Dawn. The claw woman looked from the top of a hill towards the land of people. It was a cold world, full of fences, locked doors and closed eyes. But in it, a man, a hunter, had changed. And a dog raised to attack had chosen to leave. Signs that the balance could change. The mother bunny and her son returned to their den deep in the forest. With small steps, but with great joy. Behind them, the claw woman remained motionless. She was alone again, but not the same as before. That night, another strange thing happened. The hunter, still dazed, woke up at dawn with his hand shaking on the floor under his bed. He found the key was missing, but it was broken. And next to it, a single claw, small and thin, made of silver boned. It did not bleed. It was not broken with pain. It was an offering, a warning, or perhaps a promise. "Let me not forget," he murmured. "Let me not forget." The claw woman disappeared among the trees, but her trace remained in the stories of the wind. And there, in the hollows, under the leaves, the animals knew. Someone is watching. Someone who doesn't let them forget. Chapter 8. The Human Forest. After fleeing the village and freeing the rabbits, the claw woman ventured deeper into human territory. She had left behind the dense foliage of the Enchanted Forest and entered an area where nature and humans intertwined. The human forest, a quieter, rarer place, where the trees had straight, clean trunks, and the paths were drawn by human footsteps, not paws or claws. Was an orderly forest, but betrayed by the wild beauty of the past. Here and there, trunks with painted numbers, old wooden benches, forgotten huts, broken bottles among the roots. And yet, the birds sang. The squirrels jumped from branch to branch. Life still pulsed, even here. The claw woman, perched on a high branch, watched the world with her green eyes from palm, wondering, "Can I stay here? Can I hide?" On a gray afternoon, when the sun was barely breaking through the heavy clouds, the claw woman saw a new figure among the trees, a little girl. Anna was 12 years old. She wore a yellow blouse with sleeves that were too short, red rubber boots and a green backpack in the shape of a frog. She walked slowly, with steps that did not crush the leaves, but swayed them, and in her hands she held a bag of carrots and some seeds. She carefully placed them on a log. Then she sat down on a stone and waited. "Maybe you'll come today, my little friend," she said softly. The claw woman was watching her from above, hidden among the branches. She wasn't used to calm people. People who didn't make noise. Who didn't carry weapons or flashlights or buzzing phones. Anna had none of that. Just patience, and a silent light in her eyes. After a few days of observation, the claw woman came down. Slowly, without a sound. She crept among the trunks. She crept closer. The little girl was still there, on her rock, waiting. This time, the food had been eaten. And she was smiling broadly. "I knew you were coming, even if I didn't see you," Anna said in a low voice. The claw woman stopped. Then she took a step forward. The branch she was stepping on cracked slightly. Anna turned. Her eyes saw her. There was silence. Time seemed to stop. A huge palm, with 6 long fingers and a human face in the middle, rose 2 steps from her. The claw woman had a pale face, with green eyes flashing faintly, her mouth closed, without fangs. She didn't seem to mean any harm. Just to observe. "Anna, don't run, don't scream. You're not an animal," the girl whispered. The claw woman didn't answer aloud. but a thought floated towards Anna, like a whirlwind. I'm what people forget exists. Anna didn't understand everything. But she understood enough. And she wasn't afraid. Were you hurt? The claw woman lowered one of her claws on her side. A deep scratch was bleeding slowly. The mark of a collision with the wire fence. Wait, Anna said, and took a handkerchief out of her bag. She approached carefully, then wrapped it over the wound. The claw woman did not flinch. The face in her palm blinked rarely, as if wondering if the dream was real. From that day on, the little girl came every day. With carrots, nuts, apples and colorful plasters. The claw woman watched her at first from a distance, then stood close. Sometimes, the little girl talked to her for hours. About school. About her grandmother who had taught her not to step on ants. About the fox she had seen one winter. And about how people no longer know how to be kind to those who don't look like them. Maybe that's why you're alone, she said one day. Because no one understood you. The claw woman didn't answer. But she came closer and put a claw on the little girl's shoe. Gently. Like a comfort point. One evening, a man followed Enchanted was her father. He had seen her leaving the garden with her full school bag and followed her stealthily. When he saw her standing in the forest, appearing to be talking to what? He almost screamed. The claw woman suddenly stood up, on 2 fingers, the face of her palm. Shining. Anna's father saw her and froze. Wait. Don't hurt her. Anna shouted, standing up in front of her father. The claw woman didn't move. But her green eyes narrowed. She looked at them both, analyzing. Her father took Anna's arm. What is this, Anna? What is this thing? A monster? Anna didn't answer. She just whispered. She's my friend. Her father was stunned. Then, the claw woman did something unexpected. She turned and disappeared among the trees. Not with hatred. But with a calm sadness, like a leaf blown by the wind. The next day, Anna returned. She put the carrots on the stump. She waited, and no sound, no claw. Please, don't go, she whispered. He's just afraid. But we're not all like that. Just before sunset, a soft sound of a twig being trampled made her turn. The claw woman was there, on a high branch. They were looking at each other. Anna smiled. The claw woman raised a claw in the air. Then, with a delicate gesture, she sent the little girl a thought. You saw my face, but you didn't run. You listened, that's why you have a light inside you. You are the last thing left of the humans, and the weeks that followed, the claw woman remained hidden in the forest of people. When the hunters approached, when the dogs sniffed, she disappeared without a trace. But when Anna came, she appeared again. She had become a part of the forest, living legend. One night, Anna dreamed that the forest was burning. The trees screamed. The animals were running away. And the claw woman stood in flames, her green eyes full of pain. Don't leave me alone, the voice in the palm said. Anna woke up crying. And that day she wrote in a notebook. If everyone saw what I saw, the world would never burn forests again. And they would never run away from what they don't understand. And in a corner of the notebook, she drew a hand with 6 fingers, and a smiling face in the palm. Chapter 9. Anna and the City's Secrets. The city where Anna lived was not big, but its soul was full of hidden stories, old walls and streets frozen in time. Until now, Anna had just crossed it in a hurry, with rapid steps to school or home, without noticing its details. But now, with a claw woman by her side, all its corners came to life, and the well-kept secrets began to whisper to her. The claw woman moved slowly, close to Anna, hiding her face in the palm of her hand under an old blanket that the girl had carried with her, and no one was supposed to see what she really was. For people who didn't understand, she was a monster. For Anna, she was a friend who needed help. We need to find a place where no one will look for you, Anna said slowly, her eyes shining with determination. I heard about an old garden where no one has been for years. Stray animals gather there. Maybe you'll be safe. The claw woman looked at her with her green eyes from her palm, as if she understood every word. They set off through the city. Anna held her friend's hand tightly, and she felt the city pulsate under their steps. The cracked asphalt, the stones polished by time, the walls with graffiti in faded colors, the broken windows and the flowers that had sprouted in the cracks of the walls. The city also has places where nature still lives, Anna said, telling stories as they walked. When I was little, my grandmother used to bring me here. She said that the spirits of the forest live here. I didn't know whether to believe it. but now I know that some things are truer than they seem. After crossing the Central Park, they reached the edge of the city, where the buildings were beginning to tilt under the weight of oblivion. There was the abandoned garden. The garden was a fountain of greenery that had escaped the control of people. The grass grew in large clumps, and the bushes of wild roses and raspberry bushes intertwined with wildflowers that bloomed unexpectedly. The tree trunks were covered with moss and mushrooms, and the old wooden fence was crumbling in many places. On the ground, dry leaves rustled underfoot, and the sun's rays filtered through the branches in bright spots in the middle of the garden. A group of stray animals had made their home: a gray cat with green eyes, a large dog with shaggy fur, and a reddish fox with a bushy tail. Anna greeted them all by name, and the animals shook their heads as if thanking her for their help. "They are my friends," said Anna. "I've been coming here for a long time. They all come here when the world gets too heavy." The Claw Woman got off the little girl's shoulder and slowly walked towards the group of animals. They did not seem scared at all. They seemed to recognize her. The cat took a step forward and rubbed against the giant claw. "You are not alone here," thought the Claw Woman. "We can be safe here, at least for a while." Anna smiled, then took out of her backpack a small box of food that she had brought especially for the animals. She sat down on a stone and made room next to her silent friends. The Claw Woman lay down on the soft grass, her eyes downcast to the blue sky with fluffy clouds. "You know, Anna, this city is full of stories that are never told," the little girl said, looking into the distance. "Forgotten places where things that no longer have a place in this world continue to live." The Claw Woman turned her face to her. That small, fragile face was a treasure in the harsh world that surrounded her. In front of Anna, the six-fingered monster seemed like a being that deserved more than fear and hatred. "How long have you been here?" Anna asked, carefully touching the Claw Woman's palm. "Since the world forgot about me," answered the thought that brought silence. Anna sighed and stood up. "I will protect you. You will no longer be alone." The sound of hurried footsteps broke the silence. Anna looked around. From the main street came two dark figures, hunters. "We must hide," she whispered. The Claw Woman quickly stood up, climbing a tree. Anna hugged the cat in her arms and began to run towards a deeper corner of the garden. The stray animals followed her. They all gathered in a small cave, covered with ivy, where no light reached. "Here it is safe," said Anna, but her heart was beating fast. She knew that the hunters would not give up easily, and that this garden was the last refuge. That night, Anna woke up with an uneasy feeling. Outside, the city seemed to be sleeping, but in the garden there were whispers and movements. The Claw Woman rose from the damp grass and looked carefully into the darkness. "There are the hunters," she said, and her thoughts turned into images. Shadows with guns, lamps with blinding light, metallic noises. Anna approached her friend with small steps. "I will not leave you alone," she said in a trembling voice. "We will find a way to protect you." The Claw Woman sent her a gentle thought. "You must learn to see with different eyes. The city is not just concrete and asphalt, it is a living fabric, a world hidden in shadows, stories and mysteries." Anna closed her eyes and took a deep breath. Suddenly, she saw an ancient map in her mind, with hidden paths, old stone bridges and tunnels under the city. "I will teach you to discover them," whispered the Claw Woman. The following days, Anna and the Claw Woman roamed the city at night, exploring forgotten places. The ruins of the old cinema, the hidden cellars under the church, the stone bridge with mysterious graffiti. The Claw Woman showed her how to hear the stories of the walls, how to see life beyond appearances. "This city has its secrets," said Anna. "And you are one of them." One evening, in the abandoned garden, Anna found an old book, hidden under a bush. It was a diary, written by a man who loved animals and had brought the strays there to protect them. It was a secret kept for generations, a sacred place of peace. Anna opened it and reading, she understood that the friendship between her and the Claw Woman was not accidental. It was a call from the city, a chance to change the world they lived in. The day the hunters discovered the abandoned garden, Anna and the Claw Woman were ready. With the help of the animals and the secrets of the city, they found a way to escape, to hide in old tunnels and disappear into the hidden world of the city. "It's not the end," Anna said firmly, "it's just the beginning." The Claw Woman smiled in her mysterious way and raised her palm with 6 fingers to the sky. "We will be the shadows of the city, protecting what is forgotten, hidden and misunderstood." And so, in the middle of the city, in the abandoned garden where stray animals gathered, a new alliance was born, between man and monster, between past and future, between the forgotten light and the darkness that still hoped to keep the secret. Chapter 10. The City of Iron and Smoke. The Claw Woman plucked up courage and entered the City of Iron and Smoke for the first time. It was a completely different place from the wild, green, and lively garden where she had found refuge with Anna and the stray animals. This city was a new world, a fortress of concrete and metal, noisy and impersonal, where every moment was filled with bustle, and the air was thick and heavy, soaked with strange smells of smoke and burning oils. She stepped timidly on the cold sidewalks. The Claw Woman felt every sound penetrate deep into her skin. It was a cacophony of noises: horns, revving engines, people talking in a hurry, rapid footsteps, and shrill voices, all mixed in a continuous roar that gave her no time to settle her thoughts. It was her first real contact with the human world as she had known it. These, a world of speed, indifference and isolation. Concrete was everywhere. High walls, massive buildings, suspension bridges and streets stretching as far as the eye could see. Nothing from nature could penetrate these cold constructions. There was not a single corner of greenery, not a single tree, not even a single flower to beautify the landscape. It seemed that the city itself was suffocating life, stifling any trace of naturalness. The Claw Woman walked on, her eyes wide and curious, but at the same time frowned with sadness and amazement. From her six-fingered palm, the green face with green eyes seemed to look around with a sad curiosity, but also with a wave of fear. For her, every noise was a threat, and every face she encountered was an enigma. People on the street passed by her without really seeing her. She was a strange presence, and the world they seemed too busy to notice anything beyond their own worries. Some hid their gaze, others hurried their steps, and still others looked on in fear or disgust. The Claw Woman felt the weight of indifference like a heavy burden. Where are the animals? She wondered to herself, looking at herself and her unusual skin, full of scars and chances for another life. Everything was mechanical, rigid and lifeless, and the smells of smoke and burning oil made her breathe hard. Thick clouds of smoke rising from the chimneys of the factories and the power plant darkened the sky, adding an aura of oppression. On the street, a multitude of cars piled up in chaotic traffic, honking and whirring, their hot engines vibrating on the asphalt. The engine and the noise had become a kind of language of the city, but for the Claw Woman it was a foreign, frightening language. That metallic roar made her start, and the constant movement of people around her overwhelmed her. An old man with a wrinkled face, who was sitting on a bench with an old hat, looked at her curiously and sighed deeply. He was one of the few people who seemed to notice her with a hint of pity. But even he was caught in the city's web, his gaze tired and slow-paced. The Claw Woman remembered Anna and their secret garden. There, life was simple and pure, and the animals found shelter. Here, however, everything was different. The city had become a huge furnace of iron and smoke, where life was cramped and suffocated. She walked down a side street, where the buildings seemed lower and older, and colorful graffiti tried to beautify the gray walls. Here, the Claw Woman discovered another side of the city, a side full of life, but also of pain. People with tired faces, children playing on broken streets, women selling flowers from a small basket, workers finishing their night shift. Child, with big and curious eyes, looked at her and slowly approached. She didn't seem afraid, she even smiled broadly. "Who are you?" he asked. The Claw Woman did not answer with words, but only held out her hand with 6 fingers. The child touched her fearfully, but then laughed happily, content with the secret they had shared. For the first time, the Claw Woman felt a ray of hope in the middle of that iron world. Maybe all was not lost. Maybe there was still a glimmer of light among the shadows of the city. But then, a loud noise made her start. A group of people hurried past her, talking loudly and without paying attention to her. They were factory employees in soot-stained uniforms, their faces dark with fatigue. They talked about low wages, about sleepless nights, about shattered dreams. The Claw Woman realized that the city was not only a city of noise and concrete, but also a place where people struggled every day with the hardships of life, with oblivion and loneliness. In the middle in that turmoil, she felt even more alone, but also more determined to change something. Because, deep in that city of iron and smoke, there were still untold stories, hidden in the souls of people who still dreamed. Evening descended quickly, and the city transformed into a labyrinth of lights and shadows. The strong lights of the lanterns, the bright advertisements and the illuminated windows of the buildings seemed to fight against the darkness that was beginning to fall. The Claw Woman retreated to a quieter street, where a few children gathered, trying to make a small camp with flames. They looked at her with curiosity, not fear, and she gave them a warm smile. That evening, in the city of iron and smoke, the Claw Woman learned that not everything that seems cold and unwelcoming is heartless. Amidst the concrete, beneath the incessant noise, people still sought light, even if they sometimes seemed lost. And with that thought in her heart, she prepared for the next stage of her journey, a journey of understanding and change in the world of people, in the city that seemed to have forgotten how to love. Chapter 11. The Voice from the Canal. After days spent in the noisy city of iron and smoke, the Claw Woman felt her soul burdened by the weight of injustice and sadness that hid in the hidden corners of this cold city. But fate would carry her further, to a completely different place, a place that people avoided, a place that most considered a kind of shadowy realm, the city canal. It was late evening, when the pale lights of the city began to tremble in the darkness, and the main streets became deserted and quiet. The Claw Woman, with wide eyes full of curiosity, approached an unknown corner of the city, where the heavy smell of stagnant water and filth filled the air. Under her feet, the asphalt began to change into wet tiles, and threads of smoke crept from the walls of the old buildings, steam, enveloping everything in a mysterious fog. She reached the entrance to a wide canal, hidden between two abandoned buildings, a black hole that seemed to swallow the street light. The air in that place was cold and damp, and the echo of water. Droplets rolled slowly on the moldy stone walls. It was an underground world of the city, hidden from the sight of those in a hurry and too busy to notice the world beneath their feet. As she advanced into the darkness, a sound began to creep into her ears. A weak, trembling voice, calling her name. It was a familiar voice, yet difficult to locate in that darkness. The voice called her softly but insistently, as if from the depths of the darkness. The Claw Woman tried to answer, but the words stuck in her throat. "Who are you?" asked the voice. Shiver ran down her spine, but she continued forward, guided by the gentle and encouraging sound. From the dark shadow of the canal slowly emerged a small figure, covered in spikes, moving slowly, with silent steps. He was an old hedgehog, with gentle eyes and snow-white hair. His name was Ramu, and in the underground world of the city he was known as a wise man, a keeper of ancient secrets, but also a protective spirit for those who wandered in the darkness of the city. "I was waiting for you," he said in a calm but serious voice. "I knew you would come, Claw Woman." Claw Woman was surprised. How could this little hedgehog know her name? How could this voice resonate so clearly in that world of darkness? "I heard a voice calling me," she answered slowly. "But who are you? And what do you want from me?" Ramu sighed deeply, looking into her eyes with hidden sadness. "I am Ramu, the guardian of these tunnels and the stories that the dirty waters of the city carry. The city has many faces, and the canal is one of the most mysterious. Here news circulates and secrets are hidden that people do not want to see." The Claw Woman stretched out her palm, and the face in her six-fingered palm glowed faintly in the darkness, like a small beacon in the darkness. "Tell me, Ramu, what secret does this city hide? What plan are you talking about?" The hedgehog moved a little closer, and his voice became a whisper. "The people are preparing something big and dangerous. They don't just want to control the city, but also the souls of those who live in it. A secret plan, hidden in the shadows of the powerful. A plan that, if it succeeds, will change the world as we know it." The Claw Woman raised her eyebrows in surprise and fear. "What kind of plan? How can I stop it?" Ramu sighed deeply and sat down on a damp stone at the edge of the canal, trying to gather all his thoughts into a clear story. "It is a plan that involves an invisible weapon, a magic of technology that no one fully understands, a weapon that will erase people's memories, that will make them forget who they are, what they love and what makes them human. They will become mere parts in a huge mechanism, without will, without hope." The Claw Woman felt a deep pain in her chest. This was a threat greater than all the shadows and monsters she had encountered so far. "What is the name of this weapon?" she asked in a trembling voice. "It is called Oblivion," Ramu said, with a sadness that could be read in his voice. "It is an idea that has come to life in the minds of powerful people, who want to control not only the physical world, but also the world of the soul. But how can I stop something like this? I am nothing but a strange being, a pariah in this world." "You are not alone, Claw Woman," said the hedgehog, looking at her gently. "You are not just a strange being. You are a bridge between worlds, a voice that can speak to those who have forgotten to listen. Together with your friends, the animals, the good people and even the shadows of the city, can make a difference. The Claw Woman clenched her fists in determination. It was time to fight, to become not just a survivor, but a fighter for the soul of the city. That night, under the pale moonlight and the echoes of the water flowing smoothly through the canal, the Claw Woman and Ramu began to plan their next steps. They had few options, and time was short, but their courage was boundless. Ramu told her about an old warehouse hidden in the heart of the city, where some of the technological parts of the Oblivion weapon were kept. If the Claw Woman could get there and find a way to destroy this weapon, she could save thousands, maybe millions of lives. But the mission would not be easy. The warehouse was guarded by people loyal to the planners, and the shadows were not always on their side. As she told the story, the sounds of the city began to fade, and the deep silence of night was falling over the canal. The water shone pale, and their voices remained the only living light in a realm of shadows. Before they parted, Ramu handed her a small object, a stone engraved with ancient symbols. "This is an amulet of protection," he said. "Carry it with you and remember that, even in the darkest places, a spark of light can ignite a revolution." The Claw Woman looked at him gratefully, feeling for the first time that she was not alone in her struggle. The voice in the canal had been more than just a call, but the beginning of an alliance that could change the fate of the city. She walked away. The echo of Ramu's voice still rang in her ears, and her thoughts flew to her friends and the mission that awaited them. The city of iron and smoke was no longer just a world of noise and indifference. Now it had become a battlefield for souls, and the Claw Woman was ready to face her fate with all the weapons she had. Chapter 12. The Abduction of the Deer. The dawn of a new day was pouring over the edge of the city and slowly stretching towards the Enchanted Forest. The fresh air, scented with morning dew, brought with it a feeling of tranquility, but the Claw Woman felt an uneasiness deep within her being that was difficult to describe. Although spring brought rebirth and hope in nature, a threat darkened her beloved realm. The news that had reached her ears last night, whispered by the wind that pierced the foliage, was as clear and frightening as could be. The hunters were preparing a massive hunt that would kidnap and trap the deer of the Enchanted Forest. The Claw Woman, with her light steps, penetrated deep into the forest, where the tall trees stretched their branches like protective arms above the world. The foliage the wind was blowing, and the sun's rays filtered through the leaves, creating spots of light that danced on the soft grass. It was a magical land, where animals talked, and nature itself seemed alive and attentive. But although the forest seemed calm, the Claw Woman knew that danger was near. The hunters were not far away, and their hidden plan threatened to destroy the peace of this corner of the world. With her ears pricked up, she heard the broken words of the birds screaming the alarm and the squirrels sneaking through the branches, gathering information. Every living thing knew to be on guard. In a small clearing, she met her old friend, Boral, an old stag with broad antlers and eyes full of wisdom. Boral told her about the hunter's plan, who intended to gather an entire band of soldiers for an expedition into the forest, a hunt organized with the aim of they capture not only deer, but also other rare wild animals. "This is not just any ordinary hunt," Boral said in his deep voice. "They want to catch the deer alive, kidnap them and lock them in cages, to sell or use in shows. It is a betrayal of the Enchanted Forest, a direct threat to all the beings that live here." The Claw Woman clenched her fists. Her heart was beating hard, feeling anger and determination enveloping her. She could not allow this. "We must act immediately," she said decisively. "I will gather the help of all the inhabitants of the forest. We must prepare a defense and protect the deer before the hunters arrive." With those words, the Claw Woman spread her clawed wings and set off towards the gathering of the forest creatures. Beside her joined the weaver birds, who wove webs and nets from thousands of leaves, and the gigantic lizards were preparing to attack with their agility and strength. The chameleons, masters of camouflage, were ready to sneak up and spy on the hunters' movements. The entire living kingdom was mobilized. Meanwhile, in the heart of the forest, the deer ran agitatedly, sensing the approaching danger. Their large eyes shone with fear, and their every step seemed to be a dance with danger. The Claw Woman soothed them with a gentle voice, promising that she would do everything in her power to protect them. The night before the hunt, the Claw Woman and the inhabitants of the Enchanted Forest had organized a secret meeting near the wise tree. Its giant leaf and its old branches were a symbol of life and hope. The tree urged them to use their wisdom and strength to protect the forest. At dawn the next day, the hunters arrived in force. There were many of them, dressed in camouflage clothes and armed with all kinds of tools and traps. They laughed and joked, convinced that victory was theirs. But the Claw Woman and her army were ready. The moving vines stretched out like living arms, capturing and blocking the hunters' access routes. The lizards attacked quickly, and the birds above threw hot rubber, a sticky substance that prevented them from moving freely. The chameleons slipped among the hunters, stealing the keys to the cage and destroying the traps. A real battle was fought in the middle of the forest, a fight for freedom and life. In the end, many of the hunters, surprised and discouraged, began to retreat, while a few braver ones sought to confront the Claw Woman. But she was fast and strong, and her claws made no compromises when it came to protecting the helpless. After this fierce battle, the forest regained its peace, and the deer ran free again, without fear. The Claw Woman knew, however, that the peace was fragile and that the dangers had not disappeared. She was determined to remain ever vigilant, ready to defend the enchanted world and all the beings that inhabited it. That day, through her actions, the Claw Woman showed that she was not only a creature of the shadow, but also a heroine, a symbol of courage and justice in the face of cruelty. Chapter 13. The Warning. The Claw Woman had no time to waste. She had learned, with the help of the wise hedgehog Ramu and the young Anna, that the danger threatening the enchanted forest was greater than she had anticipated. The hunters from the human world were not planning just a single expedition to capture deer, but a well-planned offensive, with several teams and traps hidden in all corners of the forest. The entire balance of nature could be destroyed, and the inhabitants of the enchanted forest risked falling prey to an unprecedented invasion. In a quiet clearing, hidden deep among the roots of an old oak tree, the Claw Woman, Ramu and Anna had gathered to urgently discuss the plan of action. The gentle light of the sunset caressed the leaves, and a shiver of anxiety could be felt in the air, as if the entire forest felt the call of the hard times that were to come. "We must warn Queen Seralindra immediately," the Claw Woman said in a determined voice. "She is the only one who can mobilize all the forces of the forest to face this threat." "But how will we send the message?" Anna asked, flapping her wings carefully. "The hunters are watching us, and the spaces between the worlds are carefully guarded." Ramu, with his small, sharp eyes, raised his nose and muttered, "I know a way. Through pigeons and bats. They are couriers of the forest, fast and agile, able to cross the air without being seen. But they will need a clear, strong message that will urge them to action." The Claw Woman nodded. With her fine claws quickly drawn into the ground, she sketched the symbolic signs of danger and protection, transmitting a short but comprehensive message. That he was a warning, a call to unity and preparation. "Anna, you will take the pigeons and send them to Queen Seralindra," she said firmly. "They are fast and nest close to our realm." "I will take care of the bats," Ramu continued. "They are good for night missions and can penetrate the hidden depths of the forest, carrying the message to even the most isolated allies." Anna flew immediately, her pure white doves rising into the air with a rustle of wings, while Ramu called her flock of bats, which took off in silent flight to distant places. The Claw Woman remained in the middle of the clearing, her eyes sparkling with hope and determination as the doves crossed the sky towards the royal castle. In the forest world, the message traveled with amazing speed. Queen Seralindra, an imposing and gentle being at the same time, was in the throne room, surrounded by her advisors and most trusted creatures. The doves arrived, the small messages tied to their legs, and were received with respect and attention. The queen unfolded the message and read the Claw Woman's serious words. A shadow of worry crossed her face, but at the same time she felt a surge of strength and determination. She knew that she was not alone in the fight, that she had powerful allies who wanted to protect the life and balance of the forest. "Prepare your army of the forest," she commanded in a firm voice. "Every creature must be ready to defend this magical realm. Whether it is wings, claws or fangs, we will fight for life and freedom." Meanwhile, Ramu and his bats had reached the most hidden corners of the enchanted forest. The bats, with their skilled eyes and ability to move in the dark, carried the word further, spreading the warning and gathering support from the mysterious beings who lived in the shadows. The small but cheerful animals were preparing for battle, and the plants themselves seemed to tremble, as if every leaf had heard the message. The Claw Woman, while waiting for news from Anna and Ramu, walked quietly along the edge of a crystalline stream. Her thoughts flew far away, to the future of the Enchanted Forest and the world she loved. She knew that the time of peace was coming to an end, and the fight for survival was about to begin. But deep in her heart burned a fearless flame. Because the Claw Woman was not just a being of shadows and claws. She was a protector, a symbol of justice and courage. And together with her friends and the entire forest, she was determined to face any danger, no matter how dark and dangerous. Night fell over the Enchanted Forest, the stars lit their lights above the treetops, and the wind brought a murmur of hope. The warning had been given, and now everyone was ready to face what was to come. Chapter 14. In the heart of the market. The sun had risen red and heavy over the city, casting long, cut shadows across the dirty roofs and steamed-up windows of the buildings. It was Sunday, and the main market was already waking up to the creak of open wooden doors and the shouts of merchants displaying their wares. The air smelled of baked bread, worked leather, and cheap perfumes. Beneath this apparent peace, however, an unseen tension was hidden. The hunters, those who had been following the Claw Woman since she had entered the human world, had a map in their hands. It was no ordinary map. It had been drawn on deerskin with ink mixed with blood and leaves of dried dandelions. The map showed precisely all the secret entrances to the Enchanted Forest and the markings made by animals and birds for orientation. Once this map was copied and distributed among the hunting groups, no corner of the forest would be safe. The Claw Woman knew that time was short. The city guards were on alert, and she could no longer risk an open confrontation. She had to reach the great market, where the caravan of Mattis, the gray-haired hunter with small, sad eyes, the one who owned the map, was located. The caravan was camouflaged among the stalls, next to a broken marble fountain, and guarded by 2 trained dogs and a woman who claimed to sell leather belts. Wrapped in a cloak of shadow, the Claw Woman descended between the buildings, slipping between wrought iron balconies, gutters, and wires stretched between the walls. She moved with an agility impossible for any human being, on 2 fingers, then on all 4s, moving from one roof to another like a cat of darkness. In her palm, her face remained silent, her green eyes fixing every detail. She had hidden her magical aura so as not to be felt by the spiritual guardians who still haunted the old towers of the city. She reached the edge of the square just as the great clock struck 10. The sound echoed across the city like a warning bell. The Claw Woman descended with an elegant leap onto the roof of an abandoned bank, then into a narrow corridor, full of steam and garbage. There she stopped. She smelled the smell of burnt skin. The map was there, close, kept safe in a locked iron chest. Suddenly, 2 children ran past her, screaming with joy. The Claw Woman pressed herself against the wall, remaining motionless. Her shadow blended with the mold on the walls. As the children passed, she slipped past a bagel stand, then crept through crates of lemons, until she reached the back of the trailer. Inside, Mattis was looking over the map, talking to a woman in high boots and a silver rifle strapped to her back. The Claw Woman listened. They planned to send the map to the city printer that afternoon. She had to act now. With a lightning leap, the Claw Woman lunged for the trailer door, splitting it in 2 with one blow. Mattis turned, but before he could react, the map had already been snatched from his hands by the creature's sharp fingers. The woman with the rifle fired a shot, but the bullet missed the ear behind her hand. The Claw Woman came out through the side wall of the caravan, tearing off the canvas and flying over the lined stalls, the map clutched in her fist. Cry of alarm rang out in the square. She ran away with the map. A mad chase began. The hunters spread out like a flock of crows. Some climbed onto rooftops, others ran through the crowd, pushing people, knocking over pots and fruit baskets. The Claw Woman ran through the great square, her face in her palms, focused, turned towards her pursuers. Her green eyes scanned the streets in real time. Her mouth wide open, spoke ancient words that confused the hunter's senses and changed the direction of the wind. She passed an old man selling straw dolls, then jumped over a cart with crates of fish, overturning it. The crowd screamed, ducked, but no one could stop her. She was a living shadow, a unleashed force. At the corner of the square, 2 hunters awaited her with a steel net. The Claw Woman stopped suddenly, stood on 2 fingers and arched back, then jumped onto a lantern and spun in the air, landing on the shoulders of a stone statue, then on the roof of a clock shop. The roofs. It's on the roofs. A shower of bullets ricocheted off the red tiles. One of them scratched her shoulder, and a thin thread of blue blood ran down her fingers. But she didn't stop. With the map clenched in her fist, she ran on, until she reached the bell tower above the square. There, with the last of her strength, she opened her fist and unfolded the map. She looked around. The world of people pulsed beneath her, a sea of walls, sounds, breaths. Then, without hesitation, she dug her claws into the parchment skin and tore it to pieces. A black wind suddenly rose from the torn paper, as if a soul had been released. The hunters felt a twist in their minds, an emptiness, a sudden oblivion. Each of them drew in a heavy breath, and their connection to the forest was broken on the spot. The knowledge from the map, roads, codes, symbols, melted from their minds like a dream after awakening. The Claw Woman, wounded but smiling, climbed back down the building, then onto a scaffold, disappearing into a dark hallway. Once again, she had escaped. Once again, she had defeated them. Behind her, the great square was in chaos. But the danger had been stopped, at least for a while. Chapter 15. The Storm on the Roof. The city seethed under the restless footsteps of the pursuers. The cries of the police and the howls of the hunters mingled with the ringing of an alarm bell that had been hastily pulled, announcing something that people had never experienced before. A creature from another world had escaped among them. The Claw Woman ran on all fours, her claws shining faintly in the diffused light of the sunset. The map had been destroyed, but the escape had only just begun. The shadows of the tall buildings lengthened, but the pursuers did not slow down. Human legs could not keep up with the creature with the face in his palm, but the bullets and traps did not need speed. Only a moment of inattention. He had passed the great church, climbed the walls of the boys' school and jumped over the terrace of an abandoned theater. The city had become a grey labyrinth, a battlefield suspended between sky and stone. But now he was at the most risky point, a tall building, a 12-story tower block, built above a former military hospital, a concrete box, with blind windows and balconies full of rusty wires. He knew he had no choice, he had to climb. From behind, the howling of dogs and the heavy footsteps of those in uniform could already be heard. He could no longer run at ground level. And then it began to rain. First, a dense silence enveloped the city. Then, a cold wind crept through blocks, picking up the garbage and dry flakes of paper. The clouds had gathered like a pack of unseen beasts, slowly draining into the sky. A muffled thunder, followed by another. A blinding ray of light pierced the sky, and then the first drop fell heavy onto the Claw Woman's hand. She paused for a second, raising her palm with her face to the sky. Green eyes slightly opened, looking at the drop. Tea was warm, although the storm was just beginning. Then, without a word, she turned to the wall of the block and began the ascent. Each floor was a new battle. The walls of the block were damp, with deep cracks and fallen pieces of plaster. The Claw Woman climbed with the agility of a giant insect, sticking her claws into the cracks, slipping between cables and pipes. Windows. People looked at her in horror. Some took out their phones, others hurriedly closed the blinds. A bullet passed a few centimeters from her head. Shoot her. Don't let her reach the roof. The Claw Woman turned suddenly and, with unnatural force, tore off a vent panel and threw it at the shooter. Then she rose higher, as the raindrops intensified, washing away the traces of blue blood from her wounded shoulder. On the 10th floor, the wind blew hard, tearing clothes from wires and balcony doors. Lightning lit up the sky and a strange figure was projected onto the wall of the building, a giant palm with a face, climbing vertically. The last part of the climb was the hardest. It was raining heavily, and the roof was only a few meters away. But the cement was wet and slippery, and the edge was covered with broken glass, placed there to deter thieves. Policeman was waiting for her at the top, with a taser. You have nowhere to run, you damned creature. But the Claw Woman didn't need a place to run. She had the storm. In an instant, a violent gust of wind hit the apartment building, and thunder shook the entire structure. The lightning struck the lightning rod, illuminating the entire city for a second. The policeman was thrown to the ground, dazed, the gun falling in the void between the balconies. The Claw Woman jumped over the edge and, with a sinister grace, stepped onto the roof. Up on the roof, it was a completely different world. The wind was howling. The television antennas were spinning chaotically. Water was flowing in streams between the cement slabs, and the sky was a chaos of light and darkness. The Claw Woman advanced among the metal boxes, tanks and rusty iron, like a living shadow in the heart of the storm. From above, she could see the entire city, the flickering lights, the grey buildings, the smoke rising lazily from the chimneys. But she didn't. There was time for contemplation. 3 helicopters were flying over the area. One of them stopped above the block, and the searchlights came on, fixing it like a mosquito caught under a magnifying glass. Stay put. Surrender, or we open fire. But she had no intention of surrendering, and nature was, once again, on her side. The wind picked up. Another bolt of lightning flashed across the sky, and the helicopter lurched. The searchlights shifted chaotically, and the Claw Woman ran to the far edge of the roof. Without stopping, she stretched her body, clenched her limbs, and jumped, a leap impossible to describe, a 4-fingered creature, with a face on its palm, passing through the night like a living ghost. She fell onto a lower building, rolling among the bricks and water. Then she disappeared into a wide chimney, leaking like a shadow into the dark tunnels of the city. The storm continued to roar over the city all night. The helicopters were forced to land. The hunters retreated. People locked themselves in their homes, haunted by a horror they could not name. Many had dreamed the same figure, a giant palm with green eyes, floating through the lightning. And down in the city canals, the Claw Woman licked her wounds, while the little bunny, sheltered next to her, trembled, but not with fear, but with amazement. "You flew," he whispered. "You flew through the storm." The Claw Woman did not answer, but a trace of a smile appeared on her face. The storm had saved her. Nature was still her ally, but she knew that something even harder was coming. The city had only been the beginning. The map had been just a piece. The hunters had a bigger plan, and she was ready to ruin their every step. Chapter 16. The Legend of the Museum. The city had woken up under the ashes of the storm. People walked the streets with umbrellas in their hands, not suspecting what creature she had slipped through their footsteps on the stormy night. Stories about a being with a face in the palm of her hand were starting to flow on social networks and in the morning newspapers, but most people dismissed them as bizarre rumors, a joke born of collective fear. But the Claw Woman had no time to hide. The storm had given her a moment of respite, but her mission was becoming clearer and clearer. She had to find out if there were others like her, and if the hunters were after something deeper than simple prey. That's how she arrived at the edge of the city, in an old neighborhood, where time seemed to have stopped. The buildings were lower, the facades made of black stone, and the windows narrow. There was the Museum of Hidden Histories, a building that looked more like a fortress than a public place. It was usually closed, but from the information gathered by the old hedgehog Ramu, the museum housed forbidden paintings and relics that people did not understand and preferred to ignore. The Claw Woman sneaked inside as night fell, through an old skylight on the roof. The museum was dark and silent. The floors creaked slightly under her weight. Inside, it smelled of damp paper, old oils, and centuries-old dust. The greenish safety lights barely outlined the display cases, the statues, and the huge paintings that unfolded on the walls. She moved carefully, her thumbs pointing forward like spider legs, while her palm-sized eyes searched every corner, every reflection. She had passed a spiral-shaped scepter, a bronze mask that seemed to laugh silently, and a diorama with an old map of a forest of legends. But it was only in the central hall, with its high stone walls and dusty stained glass windows, that she found what she was looking for, or rather, what was looking for her. The painting was on the north wall. It was huge, almost the size of a theater stage, covered with a grey tarpaulin, and its corner stood a metal plate rusty on which it was written, "Woman of the Depths, unknown artist, say 1340, forbidden for public display by royal order." The painting was considered blasphemy. The Claw Woman touched the canvas with a palm. A pulsation went through her whole being, a deep shiver, like a forgotten memory. Carefully, she pulled the tarpaulins aside and stopped. Each of her eyes remained riveted on the image that stood before her in the middle of the canvas. A creature was kneeling on a black field. It had a huge palm, and in the center of the palm, a female face, similar to her own face. Green eyes, a thin nose, lips pressed together in a melancholy expression, stars and golden rays fell around the creature. Behind her, a burned forest and a city in flames. The Claw Woman pressed her face to the painting. It was not a simple drawing, it was a prophecy. Below the image, a line written in the old alphabet, it said, "When the rain falls without a cloud, and the hand walks on 2 legs, the being from between the worlds will bring balance." She turned her head slightly. The being in the painting was not just like her, he was herself. Or an ancestor. A shadow from the past? Or maybe, a future repeating itself? She has been here before, whispered a thin voice from the darkness. The Claw Woman started. She turned quickly, her claws tense. But it was not a human. An old parrot, with blue feathers and dark eyes, sat in a decorative cage, suspended in the corner of the room. You are not the first, he said. In ancient times, the being with a face in the palm was brought by lightning. Like you. Who are you? Asked the Claw Woman in a deep voice, like wind gathered from the earth and leaves. I was once the mascot of the Royal Museum. But I have seen and heard more than I should have. I lived when this painting was exhibited in the palace. I listened to the secret counsels of the people. They fear you. Of what you come to bring. And what do we bring? The truth, said the parrot, folding its wings. The truth that the world does not belong to the people. That there are beings from other realms. That the forest speaks and the shadows have eyes. They know that you, the beings between the worlds, are the bridge between balance and destruction. The Claw Woman remained silent. Her thoughts were a whirlwind. What if it was not an accident, an anomaly, but part of a cycle? What if it had been destiny for her to end up here? To bring something, to mend a rift? And the hunters? To have known about all this? She turned back to the painting. This time, the face seemed to smile at her, subtly. And then she felt, deep inside her body, in the place where the face in the palm looked at her from the inside, a memory was awakening. It was not just instinct, not just animal instinct or the power to walk on 4 or 2 fingers. It was memory, a lost land, tree with blue flowers. Others like her, who spoke through their palms. And a promise that one day, one of them would step into the world again and restore balance. Was she the one? The parrot swayed gently. You have a way to go, living palm. The city will hunt you, but others will follow you. Seek the green circle. They know more about your past. They are the last keepers of the legend. The Claw Woman took a step back and pulled the tarpaulin over the painting again. This was not the time for people to see what they could not understand. She left the museum as silently as she had entered. The city was sleeping, but the shadows were alive. And she was going now not just to save animals or fight hunters, but to discover her true identity. Chapter 17. The Underground World. The city, with all its hustle and bustle, did not suspect that under the cold asphalt, under the subways that shook the walls, under the drains where the echoes were lost, there was another world, hidden but alive world of those who had refused to accept cruelty. There, among the damp stone vaults and time-worn arches, hope hid. The Claw Woman was no longer alone. Anna, a young woman with amber eyes and fox-like movements, had secretly led her through a secret passage in an antique shop. She had pushed aside a dusty carpet and raised a heavy metal hatch. Below her, ancient stone steps sank, polished by hundreds of nameless footsteps. When they descended, the noise above disappeared, replaced by the silence of the depths. The tunnels were wide and unexpectedly clean. Along them, warm light lamps burned with scented oils, and the walls were simple paintings. Flowers, animals, trees. Symbols of a world still alive. Anna walked in front, in a brown robe, with a hazelnut stick that she used to rhythmically tap the walls. A sign of recognition. A whistle was heard from a corner. A shadow crept into a side passage. But Anna smiled at me. Friends, Claw Woman, do not be afraid. Now you are among your own. They arrived in a large vaulted hall, with wooden tables, jars of dried plants and a huge map of the city painted on the wall. There, people of all ages were working, repairing cages, bandaging injured animals, writing reports in thick ink. Anna introduced her. She is the Claw Woman. She is alive. She is real. She saved a family of rabbits and faced the hunters. The people stopped working. A deep silence fell over the hall. Then, an old man with white hair and a she-wolf on his shoulder stood up. We prayed that the legend was true. Welcome to the underworld, being from the forest. His name was Omir and he was the leader of this place. He explained everything to me. This network of tunnels had been built by ancestors who had been part of the Green Circle, an ancient order that protected the connection between man and nature. Over the centuries, this circle had become a silent resistance to cruelty. When cities rose in concrete and steel, they hid, but they did not forget. They continued to save, to care, to watch. The Claw Woman felt overwhelmed. Her whole life had been flight, instinct, fight. But here, among these people, there was something different. It was the charge of memory. Tea was destiny that connected her to this mysterious network of good hearts. Child came to bring her a cup of mint tea. Wounded cat, she lay down at her feet. Tea seemed like a dream. But it wasn't. Omir showed me a secret room, behind the map. There, on the walls, were drawn ancient symbols, a palm with eyes, a leaf that curled around a heart, a 5-pointed star. There were chronicles written about other beings like her, about crossings between worlds, about the dangers that were coming. Omir said, "You are not alone. I in other corners of the world, other creatures are waking up. The world is changing. But you are the bridge. You are the chosen one. You must stop the great hunt." The Claw Woman understood. The hunters had high-ranking allies. They were preparing a campaign to cleanse the natural areas. They were about to destroy not only the Enchanted Forest, but everything that was alive, misunderstood, wild. But it wasn't alone. Now she had a network. She had allies. And she had a mission. The next day, the Claw Woman, and 3 members of the Green Circle set off to exit the underground, on another secret path that led directly to the heart of the natural park. It was time to gather all the rescued creatures, equip them with intelligence and courage, and prepare the great counterattack. The underground world was no longer just a refuge. It was a fortress of hope, a place from which the future erupted. Chapter 18. The Rescue Plan. Under the noisy and hurried city, where the cement was nothing more than a memory, in a network of tunnels forgotten by time, the Claw Woman clenched her bony fingers around a map drawn on old tree skin. Anna, the little girl with brown eyes and tangled hair, stood next to her, leaning against a stone column covered with moss. Around them, the good people, men and women wearing thick cloth clothes, with burning eyes and the smell of herbs, swarmed silently, preparing the plan to save the deer. "We must act before dawn," Anna whispered. "The hunt will begin at first light, and the deer are already trapped in a perimeter controlled by hunters." The Claw Woman nodded. Her long fingers, ending in soft but powerful, they moved slowly on the map, drawing in the air a route that would cross the forests, bypass the observation towers and reach the heart of the natural park where the deer stood locked up, not knowing what awaited them. "We will confuse their minds. We will not confront them," murmured the Claw Woman. "Shadows, sounds, illusion. The hunters will get lost in their own game." Anna smiled. "That's the part one like. Let's fool them." The hours passed in silence. In a dimly lit room in the underground shelter, the Claw Woman and Anna worked together with an old man named Arden, a former inventor who had descended into the tunnels years ago, refusing to create weapons for humans. Now he offered the resistant special instruments, magnetic wires, sound launchers, and opaque glass lenses that could create halos of false light. "Sound is the key," Arden told them, as he adjusted a small brass cylinder. "Deer ears hear frequencies that we don't. But hunters can also be disoriented if we send them the wrong echoes." Anna placed several coils of wire in a backpack. The Claw Woman, who had learned to move around the city without being seen, would be the one to plant the devices. Her fine claws could cut through wood, earth, and metal without making a sound. Her shadow, strange and distorted, had become an ally. And her face, a woman's face imprinted on a palm, was unseen in the darkness. And scary in the light. "When you get to the park," said Anna, "use our signal. 2 quick sparks will know you're there in the middle of the night." The 3 of them, Claw Woman, Anna, and the shadow boy named Saran, emerged through a tunnel that led to the edge of town. From there, they crept through a dense forest, where the air smelled of cut grass and gunpowder. Voices and footsteps could be heard, but no one could make them out. The deer were in a large pen in the middle of a clearing, surrounded by barbed wire and spotlights. Claw Woman looked up at the sky. The clouds were gathering, preparing a silent rain. T was the sign. She knelt down and began to dig into the soft earth. She stretched out the magnetic wires in wide semicircles, connecting them to the sound boxes. Anna turned on the special lights, and Saran he scattered the mirror effect lenses around the enclosure. Soon, everything was ready. Dawn broke and the hunters in camouflage gear prepared to attack. The plan began to work. A strange melody, like the whistle of broken glass, rose from the forest. The hunters stopped, confused. The sounds seemed to come from everywhere. Then shadows began to dance among the trees, shadows that moved quickly, as if the forest itself was taking revenge. "What is this?" one of the hunters shouted, pointing at a tall, blurry figure passing through the trees. Others fired warning shots, but nothing seemed to hit its target. As one of them approached the pen, he felt a tingling sensation in his hands. The magnetic wires were activated, and his compass spun chaotically. "We're surrounded. Someone's playing dirty." The Claw Woman stood at the top of a tree, unseen, watching the hunters argue among themselves, each convinced that he was being betrayed by the others. In this chaos, the deer had already been released. Anna and Saran had opened the back gate and were using sound signals to guide the herd through the forest, on a safe path. The Claw Woman descended with agility and, with a light touch of a claw, deactivated one of the sound boxes. Now, silence fell over the clearing. The hunters were disoriented, and their target had escaped them. They gathered in small circles, scanning the trees, unaware that it had all been a perfectly orchestrated illusion. When the deer reached a special underground passage, guarded by good people, Anna gave the signal to retreat. The Claw Woman appeared at the edge of the forest, her palms steaming from the effort. The little bunny, who had been following them from a bush, jumped into her arms. "You saved them," he shouted. "All of them." The Claw Woman said nothing, but her face, the face in her palm, had a silent smile, and her green eyes shone in the morning light. That day, her legend grew once again. For in the world of men, among shadows and hunters, the Claw Woman was not a beast. She was a guardian, spirit of justice. And their plan had not just been a successful mission, it had been an act of courage, of solidarity, and of faith that even in the midst of darkness, magic can save. Chapter 19. The Hunt Fails. The sun was slowly rising over the horizon, sending pale rays across the wet fields of the natural park. That morning, the air was unusually still, as if the forest itself knew that something important was about to happen. It was hunting day, a day feared by all the creatures of the forest. But this time, something had changed. Deep in the earth, in the galleries built by the good people, the Claw Woman stretched out her long fingers like branches, feeling the pulse of nature. Around her, rabbits, hedgehogs, foxes and deer trembled with excitement. But in their eyes there was no longer just fear. There was hope. "Today, do not run away at random," the Claw Woman whispered to them in her strange voice, which seemed to come from the depths. "Today, run wisely. Through our shadows. Through our corridors." Anna and Saran, hidden behind vines that masked the entrance to the underground tunnels, were giving the last indications. The routes were clear, marked with aromatic herbs that animals could smell, but hunters could not. The obstacles had been prepared: fog traps, mirrors of light that distorted reality, corridors that seemed to close and open as if by magic. The Claw Woman came out first. With elegant and rapid movements, she made her way through the bushes, followed by a deer with large eyes and pearly fur. Behind them, the animals lined up silently. There were almost 100 of them: deer, wild boar, foxes, badgers and rabbits. They all had a role to play. To the edge of the park, the hunters were loading their rifles. Their uniforms were clean, their sights were shiny. They were prepared to face a defenseless herd. They were led by the same hunter who had caught their mother bunny, a man with a thick mustache and icy eyes. Named Groan, he did not know that he was about to be humiliated by a legendary creature. "Don't be pitied, we are here to control nature," Groan told his team. "Let's show them who's boss." Not far away, a team of journalists was preparing to film. But what they were going to record was not the hunt Groan had planned, but a historic defeat. The first signal was given. High-pitched sound, almost imperceptible to humans, was heard through the trees. The animals started moving, not in a chaotic run, but in organized groups. Each group followed a different route, but all had the same goal: to fool the hunters, to lure them into traps. The Claw Woman was everywhere. She moved through the trees, appeared on the roofs, descended through the roots. Her shadow fell on the hunters' rifles at precisely the key moments. Fox sprang out of a bush and drew 3 hunters after her, who found themselves in front of a giant mirror placed between the trees. The image was reflected in it in a strange way, making them think they were being followed from several directions. "Wait! Something is moving there," one shouted. But it was only his own reflection, distorted. Another group of hunters was chasing a deer that seemed injured. But the path was strewn with soft soil and elastic branches that made them stumble, slide and hit each other. Finally, they found themselves in a perfect circle, from which they could not get out without help. They were trapped, but not by an enemy, but by their own inexperience. Grown, furious, gave orders over the radio. Attack. Close them. Don't let them escape. But no one answered. The signal was distorted. The Claw Woman, with the help of the good people, was sabotaging the communications from a nearby tower. A tall figure stood in front of Grown, with a hand twisted inside out, in which a woman's face was visible. Her green eyes looked at him without hatred, but with silent power. He raised his rifle. But at that moment, a family of wild boars jumped out of the bushes and knocked him to the ground. When he got up, the Claw Woman had disappeared. Instead, Anna's clear laughter rang out from the forest, followed by a series of friendly barks, the foxes hailing victory till noon, when the hunters should have returned with trophies. They had only torn clothes, fallen weapons and dirty faces. The journalists had filmed everything, the failure, the confusion, the animals disappearing into the fog like ghosts, and the network's news. In the following hours, the headlines exploded. The great hunt fails. Animals escape with the help of a mysterious creature. The Claw Woman, heroine or legend, a symbol of nature protection, is born. Grown defeated, nature takes its revenge without firing a bullet. In the underground shelter, the Claw Woman returned quietly. The children were waiting for her with dandelion flowers. The bunny was holding its mother's hand, and Anna brought her a blanket woven by the women of the resistance. You didn't fire a single bullet, she told her. And yet you won a war. The Claw Woman did not answer. But in her palm, the woman's face had a tear under her left eye. Not of sadness, but of emotion. A dream had come true. Humans and animals had worked together. The hunt had failed, but more than that, the human world had begun to see the creatures of the forest differently. And perhaps one day, there would be no need for shadows, traps, and illusions. Only understanding. But until then, the Claw Woman was there. With her delicate claws, her silent steps, and her tireless mission, to defend what cannot speak. Chapter 20. Mother's Return. The sun was rising lazily over the edge of the forest, letting soft rays of light penetrate through the dense leaves, like trembling fingers caressing the face of a clear morning. There was a gentle silence in the air, a moment of respite after the dark and restless days. The birds were chirping softly, and the leaves were rustling with joy. The forest knew that the bunny's mother had been saved. It knew that danger had been averted, at least for a while. And the Claw Woman now walked among the old and tall trees alongside the little rabbit, with a peace in her soul that she had never felt before. The Claw Woman, the strange and silent appearance with the body of a palm and the face in the middle of her hand, with jade eyes and fine claws, who once knew nothing but instinct, obedience and silence, had begun to change. Something subtle had happened inside her since she had set out on this mission. Maybe it was the cry of the little rabbit, maybe the courage of the mother in the cold cage, maybe the beauty of the city seen from the shadows, or maybe the fact that for the first time in her existence, she felt that her actions were saving, not destroying. And a clearing, the mother bunny sat crouched, waiting. She had been weakened, but safe, and now she had stretched out her front paws, and tears of gratitude were flowing from her eyes. The little bunny was hopping happily, approaching with quick steps and joyful sounds. When she reached her, she threw herself into her mother's warm fur and began to cry, this time not out of fear, but out of relief. The Claw Woman watched everything in silence, from the shade of an old beech. She did not come closer. She did not want to disturb that sacred moment of reunion. But something pushed her to stay, to feel. Her heart, or what she carried instead of a heart, beat differently. She was no longer being programmed only for survival, but one that was beginning to feel the meaning of connections. She had been born to serve a world of darkness, but now, for the first time, she understood what it meant to bring light. From the edge of the clearing, other creatures began to appear, silhouettes. An old rabbit with white whiskers and a broken ear, two sisters with brown fur, a baby squirrel holding an acorn in her arms like a treasure. The animals had heard of the return of the mother bunny, and they had come, one by one, to see her. Tea was like a small gathering, silent and full of emotion. Slowly, the mother bunny stood up and looked around. Then, with a shaky step, she headed towards the Claw Woman. "I don't know if I can speak for everyone," she said in a thin but firm voice. "But thank you. You did more than save my life. You brought back hope. The Claw Woman didn't answer. She tilted her claws slightly, in a gesture that resembled a bow. The face in the palm seemed gentler, and the green eyes shone in the morning light. Then the old hedgehog Ramu, the one she had met in the canal tunnel, appeared from the forest. He was leaning on a hazel stick and sighed deeply. "Now you know," he said, looking into her eyes. "Now you know what it means to belong to something. It's not about the forest or the city, people or animals. It's about choice. You chose to save. You chose life." The Claw Woman felt how from behind her, from the land of the Enchanted Forest, the sap of truth began to pulse stronger. Queen Saralindra had once told her that her blood had changed, that the sap of justice flowed within her. But until today, she had not understood what it meant. Now she understood. Justice was not just punishment. It was the courage to save. It was compassion. It was that something that, beyond form, thoughts and struggle, made life precious. A warm wind blew gently, and the leaves began to dance around them, a silent ritual of gratitude. The forest knew, in a way that only the old beings of the world can felt. The forest blessed that moment. And in that whirlwind of light, tears and silence, the Claw Woman felt something she had never felt before. Pride. It was not a noisy pride, but a deep, silent one, like a soft blanket that spreads over the soul. For the first time in her life, or in her existence, she felt that she had done something good, something that changed destiny. And in that piece of time, in that corner of the world, the creature with the face on the palm was no longer a frightening legend, but a silent heroine of the Enchanted Forest. The bunny's mother returned to her family, and the little one looked one last time at the Claw Woman. Then, with a short movement, she approached and touched the tip of a claw with a paw, a sign of friendship. A covenant. In silence, the Claw Woman turned back to the forest. There was much to do. The human world had not yet learned its lesson. But something inside her told her that she would not walk alone again. Now she had the trust of the forest, the animals, and maybe, even her own conscience. Chapter 21. In the People's Viewfinder. The morning was cloudy, with a low fog slowly rising above the natural park. The Claw Woman moved through the wet leaves, accompanied by 2 hedgehogs and the little bunny that never left her. And the last few days, she had saved deer, confused hunters and fled through apartment buildings and urban forests. But now she felt that something had changed in the world. And she was right. A group of reporters, hidden in a transmission van on the edge of the forest, received a strange tip. Someone had told them that a mysterious creature, shaped like a human palm but with eyes and a mouth in the center of the palm, was appearing in the area, helping animals and moving on 2 or 4 fingers, like an unreal being. A braver cameraman ventured out with a drone. The drone rose above the trees, gliding silently over the forest like a mechanical hawk. Within seconds, her camera captured the silhouette of the Claw Woman, walking gracefully on the bark of the roots. Her movements were fluid, her body arched like a question on top of a question. That moment, her face, that bizarre, feminine face, in the center of the palm, with large green eyes, turned towards the drone. The camera captured the image. Then, with a quick flash, the Claw Woman jumped, used her fingers as legs and stood up in the tree. With incredible precision, she snatched the drone out of the air and threw it into a trunk. The signal was lost. But it was too late. A few seconds of recording reached the television station, and that same evening, her image appeared on all the screens. "The Forest Show," headlined the morning newspapers. "Monster with a noble soul?" asked a TV presenter. "The unknown heroine of animals," declared an environmental activist live. Reactions were not slow to appear. Some people were horrified. "This is not natural. What hideous creature is walking among us?" wrote one online commentator. Another, "It looks like it came from a laboratory. Let's protect our children." But others, more attentive, noticed that she always appeared where animals were rescued. There were witnesses who said they saw a giant palm-shaped creature that freed cages and scared hunters. Some blurry recordings showed her silhouette on rooftops, in parks, among trees, on forums. 2 camps formed. Those who called her a monster and wanted the army to capture her. And those who saw her as a living legend. A little girl wrote on a social network, "I think the Claw Woman is good. She loves animals. She doesn't hurt us. I want to say thank you." The Claw Woman didn't know all this yet, but she felt the change. One night, while she was standing on an abandoned roof, with her bunny clinging to her shoulder, she felt something watching her. It wasn't an evil look, but a heavy, intense one. From somewhere, a camera was staring at her, hidden between the gutters. When she turned around, that photographer had run away. "Why do I feel this?" she asked herself. "Why do people feel me now, see me?" The little bunny whined softly, clinging to her. "They see us. They're afraid," he whispered. "But also curious. Curiosity brings danger," she said. "Once they see us, they will want to touch us, to keep us locked up." One day, passing through an abandoned playground, the Claw Woman found a magazine that was blowing in the wind. On the cover was her photo. She recognized a face, this time printed on paper, which people were walking around, commenting on, studying. A wave of anxiety swept over her and her world. In the Enchanted Forest, she was a guardian, an avenger, but also a free being. Here, in the world of people, she had become a mystery that needed to be solved. At the same time, in the television studios, specialists in unusual phenomena were discussing. It could be a mythological creature, or a mutant, a laboratory creature. Or maybe, she's even a savior. Some researchers wanted to catch her. A special team had even been formed, financed by a billionaire passionate about rare creatures. On the streets, some people were painting graffiti with the silhouette of the Claw Woman. In a kindergarten, a child had drawn a large palm, with green eyes, and wrote below, "She protects us." But elsewhere, a fence had a poster with a red sign, "Danger. Forest view. Do not approach." The Claw Woman climbed a high antenna, looking at the city. Blocks, lights, sirens, mixed voices. The world of people was not good or bad. It was complex. He was scared. It was unpredictable. "I don't know if there's still room for me here," she said. "Maybe you are needed right now," a soft voice answered. It was Anna, the little girl who had helped her in the underground. Anna had come with a thick coat for the little bunny and a bag of carrots. She also handed him a sheet of newspaper. "Look," she says, "a group of people want to help you. They want to protect you. Don't end up in the laboratories or with a gun on you." The Claw Woman bowed her head. "There are good people, and people who hurt without knowing it. Maybe, you have to choose who deserves to see your face, who deserves to hear you speak." But one question remained: how long could she remain invisible? That night, a helicopter flew over the park, and a voice from a megaphone said, "If you can hear us, we don't want to hurt you, we want to talk." The Claw Woman closed her eyes and felt for the weight of her own destiny for the first time. She was known. She was in people's sights. And the choice she had to make was not whether to run or fight, but to whom she would show her true soul as a fighter, but also as a being who is learning, for the first time, what trust means. Chapter 22. Caught in the Light. Night had fallen over the city like a heavy blanket of asphalt and shadows. It was raining lightly, and the drops, reflected in the orange streetlights, looked like hot tears dripping down the walls. Somewhere, on the roof of a closed shopping mall, the Claw Woman was crouching, with her strange face encrusted in her palm. She silently watched the city that never slept for several days. She had felt that something was following her. It was not the gaze of curious children, nor the whispers of rabbits or the trill of birds in the parks. It was something cold, mechanized. Those eyes that never blinked. The cameras. It all started with a simple movement. In an abandoned store, a surveillance camera captured a bizarre, long, arched silhouette, moving on four spider-like legs. Over the pixelated image, the algorithm's facial recognition failed. It didn't look like anything familiar. But a man in a security room saw it. The alert was raised immediately. The footage reached a special unit called the CIR, the Intervention and Response Center. They were trained for unusual cases: lab escapes, mutations, dangerous beings, technological conspiracies. They didn't know what the Claw Woman was, but they knew she had to be captured. That night, the sky lit up with spotlights. Black cars without numbers were advancing along the park's alleys, a drone hovered low, and agents in gray suits were sneaking through the bushes, speaking in whispers through microphones hidden in their collars. Anna, the little girl who had helped her, was the first to see the signs. A helicopter, stretched cables, a truck with bars, waiting nearby. The Claw Woman was caught in their circle. On the roof, a red signal flickered. Sensor had detected her. She was there. She lifted one of her fingers slightly, like a living antenna, and listened to the vibrations in the air. There was no longer silence. There was no longer night. Everything was lit up. A short, almost imperceptible sound was heard, a microphone signal, digitally amplified. She had been located in an instant, for huge searchlights were aimed at her. The Claw Woman remained motionless. Her silhouette, now fully visible, seemed a living statue, torn from a strange dream. With her green eyes and face fixed in her palm, she looked back at the light. Now, she's there. Tranquilizers, came the call in the headset. Two tranquilizer-tipped arrows were fired. The first one passed her. The second one touched her arm, but her strange skin, covered in a shiny shell, repelled it. She moved. With terrifying agility, the Claw Woman stood on 2 fingers, jumped over a vent, and climbed onto the antenna of a building. From there, she descended on an abandoned rope left by window washers. But the cameras were following her. From 10 different angles, her face was transmitted live to the CIRAN agent whispered. She doesn't run like an animal. Not like a human, she's like a living symbol. She doesn't have to understand. She just has to be caught. Order from above. On the sidewalk, Anna was holding the little bunny in her arms. She had tried to warn the Claw Woman, but she hadn't gotten there fast enough. Now, tears were streaming down her cheeks. She doesn't have to take it, she's not the danger. An elderly man in a big hat approached her. Little girl, get out of here, it's going to be dangerous. But Anna didn't move. She knew that the Claw Woman wasn't alone. She knew that, despite her appearance, that being felt. And that she knew what betrayal meant. The Claw Woman ran through the corridors of a closed shopping mall. The security cameras rotated slowly, trying to catch her in their range. In a few moments, the entire building was lit up like a theater stage. Smaller drone, equipped with a thermal scanner, descended and approached her. Stay still. You're in an interception zone, said an artificial voice, from the speaker. The Claw Woman stopped. In the middle of the light, she raised her palm slightly. Her gaze was not aggressive, it was gentle, melancholic. To that moment, it seemed like she wanted to say something. But her voice could not be heard over the hum of the equipment. Then, from the shadows, an agent jumped. With an electromagnetic net, he managed to partially touch her. She fell to one knee. A thin wire had caught one of her fingers. But she did not surrender. With an unexpected force, she tore the wire, coiled herself like a snake and, in one movement, jumped onto a scaffolding. The earthquake of her gesture caused some beams to fall and the agents to temporarily retreat, and the control office, the CIR commanders watched the scene. She is intelligent. Avoid the cameras. Respond strategically. Maybe it's not a creature. Maybe it's a guard.A, an old, forgotten being. We're not paid to philosophize, the commander replied coldly. We want her in the container, until morning. The Claw Woman ran towards the fire escape. There, a beam of light blocked her. But Anna appeared from behind, with a large blanket. She threw it over the beam, covering the sensor. Now, run, she shouted. The Claw Woman looked at her. Only a moment. Her face in the palm, although silent, was full of gratitude. She fled into the night, the forest, the underground, those good people who could still hide her. But now it was clear, the world of people had seen her, it had illuminated her, it had analyzed her. And she would never be unseen again. A new era had begun. The Claw Woman was no longer a myth. She was real. She was filmed. She was hunted. But now, more than ever, she had a name on the lips of children, an image in the minds of the gentle, and a purpose that grew, along with a light that no longer gave her peace. Chapter 23. Anna's Sacrifice. Night had fallen heavily over the city, and the light of the bulbs cast long, trembling shadows on the sidewalks. In the midst of the ensuing chaos, a sacrifice would be made, one of courage, friendship, and hope. Anna and the Claw Woman had hidden in a former warehouse in the old quarter of the city, a labyrinth of dusty boxes, old boards, and broken windows. They had tried to hide as best they could, but the special intervention unit would not give up. Anna's whole body ached, but she did not want to show weakness. In her trembling hands she held the little bunny that had asked for her help from the first moment, now calm, but with wide, frightened eyes. She knew that it was not just about them. The stakes were much higher, the future of the Enchanted Forest, of the animals, and of a world that could still preserve the magic. Before the new night of pursuit began, Anna made a desperate decision. If the Claw Woman continued to flee, it would all end with her capture and a collapse of the hopes of those who looked to her as a symbol. But if she, Anna, had offered to become the target, sacrificing herself in her friend's place, Perhaps she would have bought time for the Claw Woman to regroup her forces. With a heavy heart, she said to him, "I will go outside, I will surrender. Tell them that I am the Claw Woman." The Claw Woman looked at her friend with wide eyes, the green ones in her palms shining in a weak light. There was an ancient, deep wisdom in that unusual face and that silence. They understood each other without words. Anna's courage was not just an impulsive gesture, it was a promise to fight, a covenant for a cause greater than themselves. Dawn in the middle of the day. Anna walked slowly towards the street lit by the headlights of the police cars and the cameras that had flickered in the night. Dressed simply, with a hat pulled down over her forehead, she was almost irrelevant in the crowd, but to those who were looking for her, she was a clear target. Just a few steps away, armed agents quickly surrounded her. There was no time for questions. Calmly and with dignity, Anna allowed herself to be captured without putting up any resistance. An electromagnetic net covered her, and a device quickly scanned her point. One of the agents muttered, "Another ghost from that forest," but Anna said nothing. Her eyes were determined. The moment of capture, the Claw Woman watched everything from a distance, hidden among the roofs and tree thorns. Each step of Anna seemed to wrap her soul in the claws of pain, but she knew that it was the only way. Her friend's sacrifice was the shield for the wolf that was about to emerge from hiding place, herself. The next day, the city woke up to a new story. Anna had become the main news. Caught, the Claw Woman. The headlines exploded on screens and in newspapers. Images of a woman in a hat and a heavy coat, surrounded by police, played in a loop. But no one knew the truth. The Claw Woman was preparing to come out. She was aware that the next step was risky. Once she had shown herself publicly, she could no longer disappear into the shadows of the forest or the city. An entire world was waiting for her to reveal her true face, not as a monster, but as a heroine, a guardian of the helpless. While Anna was locked in a minimalist cell, the cold neon light reflecting on the walls, she continued to hope. She knew that the Claw Woman would not abandon the fight. She knew that their story was not over. And even though she was caught, she was free in mind, heart and spirit. In the middle of the day, in front of a crowd gathered in the city center, the Claw Woman made her appearance. Tall, with her fluid movements and her palm illuminated in the strong sun, she was no longer a creature of darkness. She was the symbol of a world that demanded justice. She was the voice of the voiceless. People looked at her with fear, curiosity, and fascination. Children looked at her with wide eyes, and parents with suspicion. Her speech had not been prepared. It was just a simple plea. Our world, that of the forest, of the animals, deserves to live. It deserves to be protected. I'm not a monster. I'm what many of you have forgotten to be, the guardian of life. With her voice trembling at times, the Claw Woman conveyed hope, but also a warning. The warning that if the world of people does not change, nature itself will respond, and then, it will not be just a show, but a fundamental change. All this time, Anna knew that her sacrifice had not been in vain. For the first time, people saw a face real, not a myth. For the first time, the story of the Claw Woman was becoming a tangible reality. But the price was high. Anna was imprisoned, and the Claw Woman had no intention of leaving her alone. She promised to fight with all her might to free her. And she was not alone. Chapter 24. The Choice. The city was abuzz. Newspapers, television, and social networks were filled with rumors, images, and speculations about the mysterious appearance of the Claw Woman, forest apparition, as some called her, a monstrosity for others. But no one could remain indifferent. After Anna's sacrifice, the attention of the whole world had shifted to the woman with the luminous palm, whose presence seemed to blur the fine line between reality and magic. On the morning chosen for her public appearance, the air was full of emotion and tension. The city's central square had been transformed into a huge press conference space, with cameras, microphones, and a podium. Journalists, politicians, activists, and curious people waited with bated breath. It was the moment when the Claw Woman had to make the final choice, reveal her true face, break the silence, and assume the role of the forest's guardian in front of the whole world. But the Claw Woman did not step alone before the crowd. From the shadows of the buildings, in the parks and on the rooftops, the animals of the forest had gathered silently, forming a protective circle around her. Rabbits, deer, owls, foxes, and even small insects shone with their curious and attentive eyes, forming a living guard. It was a truly incredible scene, a legion of wild creatures surrounding her. Almost like an invisible wall separating the human world from the enchanted one, the Claw Woman slowly stepped onto the stage. No words came out of her double mouth, but her illuminated palm transmitted a warm, almost hypnotic energy. Tea was like a silent language, a communication beyond words, reaching directly to people's hearts. People who looked into her eyes could feel the pain, hope and determination that shone there. There was a look that could not be denied, a call for understanding and change. For several minutes, silence reigned. The cameras captured every moment, and unspoken voices echoed in everyone's thoughts. In those moments, a new reality began to take shape. Many of those present began to understand that the Claw Woman was not just a legend or a frightening creature. She was a living symbol of the fragile bond between humans and nature, a call for respect and coexistence. The little bunnies who had run to her for help, the deer barely protected in the forest, all those animals who suffered under the threat of hunters, all of this now made sense. As the animals protected her, many people felt a change in their hearts. Some of the skeptical journalists suddenly became witnesses to a miracle, the woman who did not need words to communicate the truth, a creature of the forest which, instead of inspiring fear, conveyed peace and hope. In the midst of this amazing scene, a wise old man, representative of the local community, spoke. Here before us is proof that there is more than we know, that we must protect this fragile balance between man and nature. The Claw Woman is not our enemy, she is the warning, she is the guardian that we have ignored for too long. This statement changed the course of events. People began to understand that the fight was not between us and them, but between ignorance and responsibility. Faced with this new awareness, the Claw Woman made a choice that would resonate in time. She chose to become the bridge between worlds, to fight for balance, to bring reconciliation and inspire change. After this appearance, her story circulated in every corner of the country, teaching people to look at nature with different eyes, to respect life and to rethink their relationship with the world around them. Chapter 25. Return to the Forest. After the press conference that echoed throughout the country and forever changed people's perception of magical creatures, the Claw Woman felt that her mission in the human world had reached a crucial point. It was time to return to the Enchanted Forest, that land full of mystery and life that was truly her home. Walking slowly through the streets that still kept the echo of her presence, the Claw Woman felt how the city was gradually changing. The walls of the buildings, until recently so cold and impassive, had begun to witness a special phenomenon. Murals, graffiti and drawings that represented her, the woman with the illuminated palm, with the delicate claws and the look full of justice. These drawings were not simple works of urban art, but symbols of hope, of the ever-closer connection between humans and nature. Children, teenagers and even adults had begun to talk about the Claw Woman was admired. Some even considered her a heroine, a guardian of the forest, and others a living legend who reminded them that they could not continue to ignore the fragility of the natural world. In this atmosphere of transformation, the Claw Woman said goodbye to the world of people. Although she still felt connected to those streets, to the people who had tried to understand her, she knew that the forest awaited her. The return was inevitable, and her role as protector of the magical world could not be fulfilled from a distance. Leaving the city, through a hidden and forgotten land, the Claw Woman entered the world of the forest with light but determined steps. The leaves rustled under her feet with a familiar sound, and the smell of fresh earth and wildflowers enveloped her like a warm embrace. The Enchanted Forest was no longer the same as when she had left. A subtle change could be felt, a vibration of life that seemed to bloom more intensely. The animals that were waiting for her welcomed her with joy, and the echo of stories about her courage and justice echoed through the trees. In this moment of peace and triumph, the Claw Woman realized how important her fight had been, how much hope she had brought not only to the world of people, but also to the forest that had always been her shelter. As the days passed, the news of her return spread through whispers and songs. The forest became more and more protected, and the guardians of nature, whether animals, whether magical spirits, mobilized to maintain balance. The unspoken laws of the forest began to be respected more strictly, and the forest itself seemed to vibrate with a new, stronger energy. The return of the Claw Woman had a profound effect on the inhabitants of the forest. The small creatures who had once looked at her with fear now looked at her with respect and trust. She had become their symbol, the living link between their realm and the world of people, a bridge between two worlds that seemed so different. At the same time, in the city, people began to question their methods of treating nature. Initiatives began to appear to protect the forest, ban hunting, education campaigns, and clean up green areas. Many felt that the voice of the Claw Woman was a call to responsibility, a call to a new beginning. This change, although small in appearance, would be the starting point of a silent revolution, which would eventually bring finally the due respect for everything that was. Alive and fragile, she continued her journey through the Enchanted Forest. The Claw Woman felt her soul fill with peace. She knew that her mission was not over, but returning to her birthplace was necessary to regain her strength, inspiration, and connection with everything that was alive. Meetings with old friends, stories exchanged with wise owls, and the deep silence of the forest filled her with a joy that nothing else could offer. But, even though she was far from the world of people, the Claw Woman knew that her traces remained there, in the drawings on the walls, in the hearts of those who looked at her with hope, in the legends that were born in the city. These traces were not just memories, but the beginning of a new era, a world where magic and nature could coexist with people, in a fragile but precious balance. And so, in the silence in the forest, under the light of the moon and the stars, the Claw Woman found her place. She was no longer just a creature of the shadows or a legend hidden in stories, but a true guardian of the balance between the worlds. Her return did not mean the end of the adventure, but a new beginning, a beginning that would bring hope to all those who love and defend nature. And deep in the forest, in the clean air and in the murmur of the springs, a lively whisper could be heard. The Claw Woman was home. This is her story, the story of a creature between two worlds, who learned that true power comes from courage, love, and respect. And that, sometimes, even the most unexpected beings can change the world. Epilogue. A gentle rain fell over the edge of the city. The air smelled of clean earth, of beginnings. The enchanted forest was teeming with life, and the animals had come out of hiding, looking at the sky as if a promise had been fulfilled. Somewhere, deep in the heart of the forest, under the thick leaves of an old tree, the Claw Woman was resting. She was no longer being pursued. She was no longer running, and the city plaques had been erected with the inscription, "Protected Area." Drawings had appeared on the walls, a palm with 6 fingers, with a female face in the middle. The children called her the Lady of the Forest. Some dreamed of her. Some searched for her. And others, those who had hunted, learned to be silent and watch, to respect. Her story had reached people through a channel other than television, through the heart. Anna, her friend from the underground world, had been freed and had become the voice of the forest in a world that had forgotten how to listen. Not everyone understood, but enough began to change small things. Every day, the forest approached the city, not through trees, but through thoughts. The Claw Woman did not return to the world of people. She was no longer needed. She had not been there to punish or scare. She had been there to plant a question, a doubt in the souls of those who had forgotten the connection between life and nature. It was said that she still watches. When someone hurts an animal out of greed, when the forests are threatened, a shadow passes through the trees. A cold touch, like a breeze, a good feared, a conscience born of legend. And if you're lost in a forest and you hear a faint sound, like a breath coming from the ground, maybe it's not the wind. Maybe she's there. Not to punish you, but to ask you, do you still know? Do you still feel? Do you still know that you're not alone in the world? Thus ended the Claw Woman's mission in the land of men. But the legend is just beginning.